Are we all folks ready? Okay, I would like to open up the Single Family Design Review Board meeting for Monday, November 8th. Can we have a roll call, please?
Kathleen?
Here.
Jocelyn?
Here.
Bernie Bernstein? Here. Aaron Charles? Brian Miller?
Here.
Denise Woolery, she'll be in momentarily, and Jim Zinger will also be here.
All right.
Report.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item A, which is public comment. Anybody from the public wishing to address the board for an item that's not on today's agenda? Seeing nobody, I will close public comment and move on to item B, which is the approval of the minutes for the meeting October 25th. Do I have a first and a second for that?
Make that motion.
First by Glenn, second by Aaron. All right. Any discussions? We'll start with anything before item 1. Item 1. Oh, this was all out of order this day, so. Item 2. Item 3.
Mr. Chair,
Oh, my goodness, yes.
item 3 was,
I said item 3. How about go to Surf View, 623 Surf View Drive on page 7? Is that the one you have a comment on?
no.
I have a comment on that, item 3. Under the motion, number 3, it says, study the bay window on the front elevation, second level. Change the word entry to elevation. Okay. Anything else for item 3? Moving on to item 4. I'll go slower. Okay. Item 5, 227 La Vista Grande.
No, I was back to item 2.
Okay, let's go back to item 2, which is 2501 Medcliff
Yeah.
Road. That's not a problem.
Under the motion, replace the ceanothus plantings with a more manageable festuca. The in parentheses just say blue fescue instead of blue gray grass.
Okay. Okay. That was 2. We did 3, 4, 5. Item 6, which is 505 Baldwin Road. Item 7. And then back to item 1. Goodness gracious. They're all out of order. Okay. Anything else? If not, I call for a vote. All in favor of the minutes as modified?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item C, which is the consent calendar. I have a motion for the consent calendar, and this would be for November 1st. Do we have a motion? Bernie, in your signature, your name tag's upside down. And a second? Second by Glenn.
Yes, Mr. Chair. The consent agenda for Monday, November 1st, item A was 447 Conejo Road, and that received approval with conditions of the review after final. Item B, 803 Remedo Lane, was continued 1 week to consent. Item C, 815 C. Melinda Lane, was final approval as submitted. And item D, 1102 Alameda Padre Serra, was postponed 1 week due to the applicant's absence. And items were reviewed by Glenn Deisler and Denise Woolery.
Wonderful. Any other discussion on the consent calendar for today? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And there's no other consent calendars, just one this week? When
No,
is
we
that?
have one for today as well.
Oh, one for today. So would I have a motion for today, November 8th? Aaron is first, second by Denise.
Yes, Mr. Chair, the consent agenda for today, Monday, November 8th. Item A, 803 Remedo Lane, received approval of the review after final as submitted. Item B, 3735 Lincolnwood Drive, received preliminary and final approval as submitted. Item C, 1102 Alameda Padre Serra, received preliminary and final approval as submitted. And item D, 1240 Northridge Road, received preliminary approval with the NPO findings and was continued indefinitely to consent. Items reviewed by Glenn Deisler and Denise Woolery.
Wonderful. Any other discussion on the consent calendar for today? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item D, which is announcements, requests by applicants. Do we have any announcements for
I
today?
have no announcements today, no.
All right. So we're on to item 1. Item 1 is 230 Lighthouse Road. We've heard this project before, so we'll have some minutes from the previous meeting. You guys want to come on up? Before you start your presentation, I have a question for staff. Michelle, we have this on for number 1 and for number 2. So number 1, we're just going to talk about the site design, and then we take a motion and vote, and then we move on to item 2, which is going to be the architecture and the buildings.
True, yes, correct. Item 1 will be the review and possibly approval of the subdivision and grading plan.
Okay? So that's what we're here for first. If you have your name for the record and your presentation.
Detlev Pikert, Pikert Group Architects.
Gordon Brewer, Pikert Group Architects.
We didn't have your mic on. Now you can go again.
Gordon Brewer, Pikert Group Architects.
Jeremy Saltz, Penfield and Smith Engineers.
I'm David Black, landscape architect for the project.
Okay?
Mr. Chair, it's some months ago, actually probably more than a year ago, we came to this board with this project for comments for Planning Commission review, and at the time, of course, it was just a subdivision consisting of 8 single-family lots, and that plan eventually did go to Planning Commission, and on July 23rd of 2009, it was approved. And we are now moving forward with the development of the property. And so this first item that you'll be looking at is the subdivision map and the grading and drainage plan that's in front of you here that has been prepared by Penfield and Smith. And Jeremy will talk a little bit about it, but the approval for this is separate from the approval of the individual houses that we'll be looking at immediately after we've had some discussion on this. So just a little bit of background about the basic design, so you understand what you're looking at if you weren't involved in the original comment review. This is a little different than the conventional subdivision. We kind of really went out of our way here to create something that was very much pedestrian oriented, and because of the neighborhood that we're in, and then also we wanted to address certain issues that were brought by some of the neighbors, namely neighbors to the north and to the south, the school to the south, which led us to a subdivision that shows easements for private driveways both on the north and the south side of the property, with the concept of a walk street down the middle of the development, so that the actual houses, and you'll see this when we present the details on the houses, their front entrances are actually facing this walk street down the middle of the subdivision, and then the north and south driveway sides are the vehicular access for the homes. And so I think I'll ask Jeremy to just describe a little bit about the the grading concept and the drainage concepts embodied there.
Yes. The site, as Deddy mentioned, the paseo through the middle of the site is kind of one of the key elements of it. And what that kind of requires is that the lots on the north and south facing each other need to be at roughly the same grade. And in its existing condition, the site slopes from north to south, and you've got about a 8 to 10 foot grade difference from one end to the other. So we need to find ways to take up the difference in grade and be able to maintain these front yards of the homes being able to sort of look towards each other without these lower lots being down in a hole from the walkway area. So what we've done is sort of average it out throughout the site, where we come down a little bit on the north end and have a retaining wall here It's a 4-foot maximum height along this drive. So it'll be a retaining wall and then a slope area behind it for landscaping areas, and then a wooden fence along that north property line. And
Yeah, sorry.
to get these, and then we bring the southerly driveway up a little bit from existing grade with a low, like a 2-foot retaining wall along this property line. And then there's a block wall along this property line as well, instead of a wooden fence for separation between the school and the homes. So we push this down a little bit, and the driveway actually comes down a little bit from the road in the first 50 feet or so. And the southerly drive comes up a little steeper in the first little bit, so that we kind of make up some of that difference there and there. And then we've maintained the lots north to south across this direction, where we've got about 2 feet difference in the pad elevations is the biggest difference, to try to keep all of the lots feeling like they're part of the same effort here to get out to this Paseo area and walk out to the street. The drainage of the site it currently just comes down this direction and sheet flows off the southerly boundary into the school property, into their playground area over here, and this slopes down kind of towards some of their buildings. And the proposal is to collect the drainage within the site and get it out to the street. Everything is going to be treated per the city's latest stormwater quality ordinances. The driveway comes and gets treated by it's a bioretention, like a catch basin with a tree growing in it. There's a Filterra is one of the brands of a proprietary treatment system for just this driveway area. And then most of these pads and lots will be treated in a larger open bioretention facility that's going to be incorporated into the walkway area. And then the southerly driveway and some of these lots and some of the front areas would be treated with bioswales. This one in a landscaped area between the driveway and the property line, and another one over here along the frontage in this area. And then we have a requirement to meet 25-year storm flows to pre-developed levels of the site. And there's going to be an underground subsurface detention basin here behind the sidewalk within their private property that all the northerly half of the site would drain to reduce peak flows from the whole site to pre-development levels. And this is the center area would be an easement to the HOA, so this would be maintained by them, and all the storm drainage on site would be maintained by the HOA as well, including the biofiltration areas, the swales, and the subsurface detention area. And then along the street frontage, you have the curb and gutter area generally stays in where it is today, although there's going to be a 10-foot dedication of right-of-way, which doesn't exist right now, to take the right-of-way back to the back of sidewalk.
Great. Just before you finish up, was there anything on the minutes from the previous meeting having to do with site design? I forgot to read the minutes of that.
There are some. It's probably best that I
You want to just go through all
read
of them?
them all to
Okay.
see which ones. Most of them actually are, because we did not see any designs for houses last time.
Okay.
The first comment there are concerns about the building envelopes right up to the alley. In the future, the board will review individual houses for placement within building envelopes for relationship to alley and for landscaping. Number 2, the common open space should be park-like and natural in character with surrounding neighborhoods and parks. Number 3, on-site parking should be adequate for guests. Consider guest parking on driveways. Parking should be adequate to prevent impacts to street parking. Number 4, the solid 8-foot wall and landscaping adjacent to the school is important to provide privacy and mitigate noise. Number 5, the lots adjacent to Lighthouse Road should have a street presence. Number 6, there is a concern that the proposed triplex will generate a building that is not compatible in size, bulk, and scale. Study having duplexes. The board will insist that multiple units be compatible in scale and appearance with the single-family homes. Number 7, study trash truck access.
Great. You want to add anything else to your presentation?
I just want to clarify that we may have shown some exhibits showing kind of generally what the concept was for how the houses would be designed, but there is no triplex incorporated there. These are all now single-family lots, and at one point there was a notion to have some affordable units incorporated into the design, and that was rejected by the Planning Commission in favor of just a straight-ahead single-family subdivision. So for this item, we're looking for approval of the grading drainage plans so that we can start moving forward with the recordation of the subdivision map, and then of course separately from that we'll be talking about the houses.
Is the landscape review separate also?
The landscape review will be tied up kind of with the house design, so we're going to get into details on that as part of the presentation with respect to the houses.
Okay. So is that all for your presentation?
Yes, that was all. Thank
If
you.
not, I will open up public comment. These were handed to me in the opposite order that they were turned in, so the last shall be first. Ed Gamble will be the first speaker, followed by Nasia Gwynn. Nika Gwynn, I'm sorry. If we can have that seat open. And that mic's not on.
Hi, Ed Gamble, 320 Lighthouse Road. So my basic question is...
Which house is yours? Are you adjacent?
On the north, yeah, that's actually it.
Okay.
Yes. So my basic question is the grading plan dependent on the size and orientation of the homes? Because the size and orientation of the homes hasn't really been decided yet. It's the next item on the agenda, and there's numerous discussions that may be
We'll ask
detailed
that
in
question. Okay. Anything else you want to talk about the site plan and the layout?
So obviously, if the plan is dependent on the orientation, size, nature of the homes, then one can't go forward with the grading unless they intend to regrade it again.
Okay, thank you. Nika Gwynn, followed by Walter Dukes.
So we're at 313 Salida del Sol, which is
Over here.
that house right there. And actually, if I can I point there?
You may.
Our concern is that it might come in this next section with the house plan, but this is our bedroom right here with two second-story windows and no door to the bathroom right there, so you can see like completely through. So we're really concerned about privacy from the balconies of these two houses and also this house, and wondering what the landscaping plans are for all along here, and if they're right now, I think I saw palm trees in the plan, but I'm concerned that that's not.
We'll probably talk about this at the next number 2 item because
Okay.
we're not going to talk about the architecture of these units. So, but hold that.
Should I come back then for the second?
If you don't mind,
Yeah.
refresh our memory.
Yeah. Fine.
Okay. Walter Dukes, followed by Natasha Campbell. You'll wait for number 2, so we'll save your talking slip. This is Natasha, and then David Hetyoung will be last, but he was first.
Thank you. My comments are mostly for item number 2 as well, but one of your comments was about a wall versus along the property line, and I understand that now a wall is proposed versus a fence. So if everyone's in agreement with that and you're not going to change it back to a fence, then
We'll
I'll
ask
save my
that
comments
question.
for number 2.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you. Mr. Hetyoung?
Thank you, Chairman Zink. Our concerns were basically the same as what Natasha Campbell said. We had 2 concerns about the drainage, the water flow, and the block wall, and as of now, the architect has addressed those concerns for item 1.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other speakers for this item? If not, I'll close public comment. Staff, are there any letters of...
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do have one letter of concern from Ms. Paula Westbury.
Okay. So we'll return it back to the board for questions of the applicant. And I'll just jump in first with 2 quick questions. Can you address the building envelope for the alley that was part of our comments? And the second one, if you can address this wall a little bit more detail in either order.
Yes, I'll just say one thing with respect to the building envelopes. As you know, this is an approved subdivision map now. The building envelopes were defined in that subdivision map as part of the overall approval, I believe.
Through Planning Commission?
Yeah.
Okay. And then can you give us a little bit more information about what's happening along the southern property line? Do you have a section through that area?
Yes, what we're proposing there is it's a 5-foot screen wall if you're on the subject side of the property, and it retains, it kind of varies as you go along the property line, but a maximum of about 2.5 feet, 30 inches. So on the school side of the property, it can be up to about 7.5 feet high, and it would be kind of 5-foot typical on the north side near the property. And when you go onto the school property, there's an existing, a pretty substantial slope that goes down into the play areas. You're down where it flattens out. You're down at 168 or so elevation. And when you're up near the property line, you're about 10 feet above that. So you've already got a pretty big grade separation between the two, and then now you'll have a block wall along here as well.
So this is an exhibit that we'll be using as we go forward also, but it does explain what's going on there. Here's the school down below. This is kind of a playground there. This is the rather sharp slope that goes up to our site, and then there's the block wall, 5 feet, and then of course the landscape buffer there, and then the houses are set well back from the property line here.
I mean, it might be worth noting that there's a dashed line right there that represents, if we'd done a conventional design with a cul-de-sac and houses pushed back to a 20-foot rear yard, taking 20 feet on the other side and 20 foot to the yard, that's 40. We're set back at least 1.5 times that, and since noise diminishes inversely to the square of the distance, we're at more than half. The noise is reduced more than half of what it would be under a conventional design. That was really one of the big factors in laying the site out this way.
Okay. That was all my questions. Any questions for the applicant from the board members? Denise?
Yes, I'm curious, I bet this is going to come up in the landscape plan, but as I look at the walkway, the central walkway, and the bioretention areas, I'm assuming those are going to be green swards when we're all done, since they're not underground, are they, these retention areas?
They're at the surface.
They're at the surface?
Yeah.
And they will be vegetated grass, green sward type things? Okay, that's what I figured.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Glenn?
If the applicant could briefly discuss the parking schemes of how each of the lots and guest parking may be handled, or what their thoughts are about that?
Each of the houses has a 2-car garage, and then we've made provision for an additional space, which would be a guest space that's shown here in the shaded area for each of the lots. So in other words, there are 3 parking spaces available for each of the homes.
Questions from other board members?
And there's no additional street parking
And there's parking on the street also.
on Lighthouse, but not on the private driveways, correct?
Not on these private driveways, no.
Mr. Chair.
Bernie?
Thank you. Could you just explain how you fit in the open space and park-like design features that were requested?
We'll be looking at the landscape plan in the next item in detail, and you can see here this dashed line indicates an easement, common easement for the subdivision, and that area is part of the common open space, and that'll be landscaped, and we'll be showing you the landscape plan very shortly.
Okay, we'll look at that next.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I actually have 2 more questions. One of them has to do with these areas that are in the middle here. With them being, is this the only one that's the bioretention facility, or is there going to be biowater storage in these upper 2 as well?
It would just be in this one. One of these areas provided 2 or 3 times the area that we needed to treat kind of the small area that it's treating. So we centered it all in one of these so that these 2 would have more flexibility as far as what's planted there. And they
That
could
was
be
my
more
real
useful.
question. This can be planted with anything we want. There's a limitation of what can be planted here because it's being used as a rain garden, basically, or as a
Yes.
filtration area.
Right.
This zone right here, which is 6 feet, is there a limitation on what can be planted in this zone since it's also being used as a drainage swale?
Not as much. This is proposed to be a vegetated bioswale, which can be a lot of things. It's not really designed to pond water as much as this type of a facility is. So water just flows through it, and we're not directing a very large area to it either. So it won't really be inundated with water. So it could be flexible.
And we made it, wide enough to allow for the planting of some trees that will act as a buffer there as well.
Okay. And I wanted to look at this section right over here because I wanted to see what kind of landscaping can happen based upon the steepness of that hillside. Where would be the 4-foot retaining wall, 2-to-1 slope, 5-foot landscape. And this is a wood fence on this property line, or on this side it's going to be a masonry, and it's not exceeding 8 feet from the downhill side.
And that's correct.
Okay. Are there questions from other board members? And if not, we'll move on to comments.
I actually have one question.
It's too late. I closed it.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. Yes, Mr. Miller.
It's a tough crowd here. This wall here, the 5-foot screen wall, is it this topic to talk about what that will be, or? The make of this 5-foot screen wall. Has there been talk about what that'll be?
It would be a CMU, kind of a standard CMU block wall, and most likely it sounds like probably like a plaster finish.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, we're on to comments. Actually, let's back up.
I'm sorry.
There was a question made by a speaker about the size of the house and the grading. And correct me if I'm wrong, either staff and for the applicant, I don't believe the grading has any relationship to the size of the house. The pad is a pad, and the house is either going to be 1,200 square feet or 3,600 square feet. That's secondary to the grading that's happening here?
That's correct.
Okay. The board members kind of concur with that, so the amount of grading that's going to be happening here is not dictated on the size of the house. So now let's move on to comments. No one has any comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Denise.
I wanted to comment upon the central feature. I find that to be a nice solution to bring in the pedestrian and have the homes facing that. I look forward to seeing the landscape plan and what's planned in that area. But just from the look of this particular plan, it looks like a nice solution.
Thank you.
Comment. I too say that there's been a lot of thought and planning and concern and sensitivity, and I feel very positive of what this design looks and what it holds.
Great. Other people? I'll chime in to say that the layout is fine. I like the layout. I liked it the first time. My only concern is the amount of landscaping that's going to be happening in these different zones, but we'll address that later. But the actual layout itself, and I'm comfortable with it as a subdivision tract map. So if there's no other comments, do you want to make a motion, somebody? Oops. We need to verify that the resolution has been addressed.
It starts there, page before.
Okay. Tree removal we'll address at a later date. Oak trees, time and replacement, screening, backflow, future residents, guest parking. All of it has to do with stuff for the next review.
So maybe our motion should exclude the things that we're not comfortable with yet, that we haven't even talked about yet.
A suggestion would be to make a motion for the tract map excluding comments on landscaping and about the tree removal and the tree replacement
On the wall.
and the perimeter walls. And that'll be discussed during the house project.
And there's, other things too. We haven't talked about the lighting.
Back up for 1 second. Lighting is one thing. I'm going back to the thought about the wall, and because we're basically giving this project approval for the track map, which gives them a grading permit, and this location of the wall is required as part of the grading. So this wall needs to be blessed during item 1, as well as this fence and this wall, because that is part of securing the perimeter for the amount of grading that's going on. Is that correct?
Fair to say.
Fair to say. So if we were to give this project preliminary/final today, for the track map, we can exclude the landscaping aspect of it because it's not in front of us. And lighting. Question, are you going to propose any type of lighting along the driveways, or will that be talked about at the next review?
We'll talk about it the next review.
Perfect.
It's part of the subdivision.
So, is there someone who would like to make a motion?
I'll try to craft a motion, Mr. Chair, again. I would like to make a motion for preliminary approval of this track map and the grading and drainage for 230 Lighthouse Road, excluding the landscape, which we will discuss next.
Okay, is there someone who wants to second that motion?
I second that motion.
Second by Mr. Miller. What do you think is lacking for it to get final, or should we say final at consent with the rest of the drawings that are necessary?
Yes.
Final on consent?
Final on consent.
Okay.
Well,
what-
wait a second, because this is, it's a major project, and we haven't even seen the second part of it, so maybe it's all going to come back in one understandable piece together.
Well, I was actually going to say what's missing for consent. Are these drawings good enough to go in the building department for grading purposes?
No, these were developed essentially for this purpose, to show all of the grading along with public improvements, whereas when we go to building and safety, we'll take public improvements out, and it'll be a much more developed set of plans than this.
Okay. Does staff want to add anything?
I just wanted to note that the condition specifically said, as you're aware, the grading plan, including any landform alterations, public improvements, private common improvements, and landscaping. So perhaps it does make sense to look at the whole thing together as final, which had been mentioned. That way you can see the landscaping, because those really are common improvements. And also, before the Public Works Department could issue the public improvements permit, they would need to see the landscaping in the right-of-way, all those details. So I think it does make sense to keep it all together for the final.
So the person who made the motion, if we made it preliminary approval today, returning back to full board for final, which would include landscaping for the common areas, as well as the landscaping along the right-of-way.
Mr. Chair, are we not going to see the landscaping now?
Well, we'll see it the next review.
As part two?
Among the houses, part 2. But staff just made reference that the condition from the Planning Commission said that the grading would also included landscaping for the common areas.
Okay.
That is correct?
I can accept that then as part of the motion.
Do you understand that, Mr. Miller, number 2?
Yes.
Okay, and so it's coming back to full board. Thank you for that, Bernie. Any other discussion? Any discussion from you guys? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. You have preliminary approval, and I'll announce a 10-day appeal period for this. Moving on to item 2, which is the 8 houses for this area. This is 230 Lighthouse Road. I will keep all of the speaker slips from before and go through them again. And keep that too. Put them on top. They won. Oh. And if you don't mind, I'll have you go through your name again just for the record.
Detlef Pikert, Pikert Group Architects.
Gordon Brewer, Piker Group Architects.
David Black, Landscape Architect.
Right, Mr. Chair, shall we continue?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, time out until they have drawings in front of them.
These drawings are identical, except that they're not all crinkled and they're in color. Yes, they are.
And they're prettier. Okay. They can have her own set now.
the color.
You're up.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we've talked a little bit already about the basic layout of the subdivision, and now we're going to be talking about the specific details of the design. And obviously, we have the usual site statistics, coverage areas, and all that sort of thing. But I want to just kind of get right into a little more detail on the site plan, after which we'll talk about the landscape plan. So this is a site plan that shows a little more, with a little more definition, how the building footprints are located on the site, and then how this walk street in the center of the development is laid out, and how the private yard areas are zoned in relation to the walk street and in relation to the driveways. And so again, the concept here, and we talked quite a bit about this at the concept review hearing, about how this works, and there may have been some confusion initially about where the main entrance is and what a walk street is and how it really relates to this type of development. But these are the vehicular access driveways on both the north and the south, which provide this buffer, distance buffer between the existing development to the north, and then of course the school to the south. And that was kind of a fundamental feature of the design of the site. And again, now we have these building footprints. We've designed the houses, but because there's a gradient towards the south, we actually have some different floor plans, different configurations for the houses on either side. Mainly because the views that might be possible to capture some glimpses of the ocean from the north and from these southerly units, we've arranged decks, upper story decks, in such a way that it resulted in some changes in the upper footprint of the homes, as well as general architectural variation of the designs. And again, you see the private yard areas in the darker green, and then all the common landscaped areas in the lighter green. And we're talking about that.
I might say one of the challenges with this method, or this site configuration we picked, was how to handle front yard, backyard, private space, and public space. You notice that the two houses facing Lighthouse Road they're really a totally different ground floor and a second floor because of that, and they really address the street, have the street presence with some entries as you look at those elevations, and they have a true backyard. So they're pretty much standard houses as if they were just by themselves off of Lighthouse Road. If you look at the elevation of Lighthouse Road, you see there's an entrance pergola again as an entrance to this courtyard. And then the other houses, because they didn't really have this backyard per se, it was kind of a challenge in figuring out how to deal with that need for private space and public space. So what we did was create this little courtyard in the interior to really give them a little kind of a place of privacy and definition of, this is our private yard. We're not right out in the side yard. We're not in the front yard. And we're not on the driveway in the back. And so I think that goes a long way to enhancing the usability and the sense of privacy of those homes. So.
Yeah, and again, as I mentioned earlier, we really went out of our way to create something very special here, as compared to the conventional cul-de-sac subdivision. Just recognizing the walkability of the neighborhood surrounding the development, and just kind of really accentuating that concept, and then the idea of these courtyards that are really going to create a very, very pleasant sort of communal space for the residents of the development. So I'm going to flip the sheet over to show you the front street elevations. And so these are the two houses that are facing the street, one being what we call the uphill house, and then the downhill plan. And again, Gordon described the pergola here at the street, and there'll be a low plaster wall along the street frontage there. That will define the private portion of those front yards as differentiated from the public landscaped areas. And then again, their front doors are facing the street out to Lighthouse Road in this case. And as you can see, the style is, kind of Santa Barbara Spanish style that we felt was appropriate to create the kind of atmosphere and setting that we wanted to create for the development.
All the mailboxes will be located in that pergola, so it'll be really a nice sense of community as you enter the courtyard.
So in other words, they're off at right angles to the perpendicular to the street. There's a little niche there for mailboxes on either side of that entrance.
Okay.
And then you can come back to these floor plans, but you can see how the decks are configured, etc. Okay, and then these are the a couple of samples of the other houses and their configuration, design. Again, how we differentiate with the use of arches and balconies, wood balconies. We're actually incorporating some photovoltaics for each of the houses, of course. And the way we're doing that, rather than trying to integrate them into the tile roof or creating flat roofs, etc., Gordon's come up with a concept here where we have a pergola over the outdoor patio, second level outdoor patio areas that will have solar photovoltaics on the pergola itself.
They'll be basically flat, so they won't really intrude visually on the character of the house.
So again, here you can see the outdoor patios. First of all, on the ground level, a covered porch sort of thing. On the second level, you see the balcony facing south. The garage is back here. On the southerly unit, we have so now you have the driveway down here and the garage facing south, whereas these garages face north, of course. And here we have the outdoor patio on top of the garage with the pergola above. And then I think one of the concerns, and we pointed that out in that little sketch, is that these are all solid plaster.
42-inch walls.
Yeah, 42-inch plaster walls enclosing those patios.
Could you say that again, please, about the patio on top?
You have this in elevation too, because these are the uphill ones, right?
We brought that.
Yeah.
But go back to explaining that this is a solid wall, 42 inches high, along this second floor balcony.
Yes.
It would be that wall right there.
Okay.
That's what you're seeing.
And I'm sure if we do you have
we have one rear elevation of that.
We don't have we didn't elevate every building.
Did you bring that little one?
Yes. I'm sorry, we do have that. And it's right here. We did draw an elevation just to give you an example so that you're able to see what that looks like.
Let's put one for the TV camera guy.
Yeah. One down there. So it's similar to the other elevation, but we just wanted to clarify for purposes of satisfying some of the concerns of the school district that there's not a wrought iron balcony there. It's actually a solid 42-inch plaster wall, so that again, to reduce noise and visual impacts.
Okay.
And then I want to go back to this Walk Street elevations. Somewhere we have those. Right? On the front sheet. So that gives you a view.
This is the Walk Street?
Yes.
Okay.
And in this case, we're looking north. So you're seeing in other words, you're looking at this elevation in this case.
Because here's the mailboxes and here's the mailbox.
Exactly.
This fireplace is that fireplace.
Right.
This one, that one.
So it kind of gives you a sense of how we're articulating the massing and the details of the elevation to create some differential aesthetics for each of the houses.
There really are no two houses that will have a similar exterior. They're going to all be unique exterior designs.
And then this gives you, this rendering gives you a little bit more of a feeling for what this space in the Walk Street looks and feels like. And in this case, we're looking now at a house on the downhill, on the southerly side. You're looking south towards the ocean in this case, and you're seeing a slightly different configuration. Rather than having a balcony here over this porch, the balcony's, as you saw on the floor plan, out over the garage, looking in the other direction. So you get a different look and feel on some of those units on that side.
Great.
So let's go to the landscape plan.
So this plan illustrates the disposition of all the common landscape areas. You're pretty familiar, I know, with the site now, but the experience then is, as you come in through this pergola mailbox structure, there would be a sort of a fountain sort of greet you as you come in, and then basically the circulation is laid out here. There's three major sort of central planting areas, if you will. The first one is the one that we've designated as the bioretention area, and Jeremy's explained all that. So we're seeing this mostly as a grass garden. I noticed in the plant list that we don't really have the Berkeley sedge in there, which is actually the predominant retention planting that would be in the central area that's most appropriate for that use. This area we're designating for a more traditional lawn area. We'll probably end up using a sort of a low water UC buffalo grass type grass here, and then this is a planted out planter down here. We're seeing this area down here as it could be sort of a gathering spot. We could put some benches and what have you down at this end here. As far as the sort of the landscape, the primary landscape elements, out at Lighthouse, the designated street tree by the city is the desert willow, which we show here in the parkway. One common thread throughout is the Washingtonia robusta, which I just thought was kind of a nice feature in the sense that all these buildings are two-story, and it'd be nice to have sort of an overhead canopy, as illustrated in the renderings that Gordon's prepared here, and they're sort of sprinkled throughout with some sensitivity to the views from the second stories to the south. And you can see how we've sort of used them, and so it's sort of a common thread, as I mentioned, sort of an overhead canopy from a landscape perspective. I should point out, on the downhill side, adjacent to the driveway, we have a series of sort of upright canopy trees that we're anticipating won't take up much space because we do have that bioretention element running along this planting area. What we're proposing here is the firewheel tree, the Stenocarpus, which is very upright, flowering, and in addition to that, we would use appropriate grasses and such in the bioretention portion of this planting area. In addition, we would put flowering vines up on the wall, which would probably give it another couple of feet in height to sort of buffer the Washington School from the development on this side. On the uphill side, there's a retaining wall, which will probably plant, a ficus or a Virginia creeper vine on the wall itself to just sort of green it up. Although it's not shown here. I don't know whether they're going to plant vines in the fence because this is common to these adjacent properties, so we have to work that out. I think the arbutus is a tree, a multi, that we would think about using on this uphill slope, and it would sort of spread and canopy over. And then the plant list here shows the palette of canopy trees, which we would anticipate using throughout the project. We're sort of seeing the overall palette of material as being low water, using a lot of succulents, agaves, aloes, what have you. The only lawn area that would even use up water is the one area here. And then in response to the neighbor, and we're sensitive to this, although I don't really illustrate it, probably not as well as I should have at this location, but we're perfectly amenable to creating more of a common area upright screen at this location. It may be, too, for the benefit, and I'm sort of speaking maybe a little ahead of myself, but it may be that we could write some restrictions in the CC&Rs, thank you very much, CC&Rs for some of these backyard areas for these particular units, 4 and 5, that they provide screen planting against this boundary. I think I've hit all the highlights. I think the plant materials speak for themselves as far as the palette and list of materials here. There will be fine-tuning, obviously, particularly as it relates to the retention areas. But that is the general overlook, or overview, rather.
Great. Is this the one sheet that you had? Is there other sheets here?
No.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Mr. Chair, just got a couple of things to finish up our part of the presentation here. I just wanted to point out that we do have a sheet in here that relates to the neighborhood preservation ordinance, and the city has, as you know, does have such an ordinance, and that ordinance specifies the desired size of the homes. And in this case, our homes are in the 24 to 2,500 square feet net habitable area, and that is below the threshold that would require additional elements for review of. So in other words, we're at 85% or less of the maximum allowable FAR. So that the homes are, I think, reasonably sized. They're certainly not oversized, and they're within the parameters of that ordinance. And then finally, I just wanted to summarize very quickly, because I know some of the speakers will be speaking to these items, so that they're in our minds. One of them I've already spoken about, the site configuration, how we arrived at the dual driveway and the central walk street to create this buffer between the school, etc. And then the 5-foot block wall, which we've mentioned, the dense landscaping on the southerly border, again to screen the school from the development, as David just described. The solid balcony wall is another item that we've incorporated to be sure to meet the goals and concerns of the school district and representatives. Double pane windows, etc. There will be disclosure documents as part of the package for the future buyers of these homes that disclose the potential for noise issues related to the school. And then, of course, there'll be a summary of the noise mitigation of interior noise that's required as one of the conditions of approval. And then we talked about additional, and then related to one of the other neighbors, the additional screening on the eastern side. Unfortunately, her house, the portion of the house that she was describing, faces down that walk street, so there's none of our houses are directly facing her home. And that pretty much concludes our presentation. Thank you.
I'll open up public comments. Does the staff want to make any comments first before public comment? Okay. David Young, you're first, followed by Ed Gamble.
Thank you, Chairman Zank. Just a few comments. One of the district's concerns was that we have adequate parking on site for whatever this board feels necessary. We just want to have you review that a lot of times, we want to restrict vehicles and where they park, and there's parking on that street is typically used and dense as existing, and we just want to ensure that there's adequate parking where people on a routine basis won't be tempted to use the school district as their parking spaces. I think you've addressed some of the view concerns that we had. I think the architect has let us know what those are. I have no additional comments on that at this time. One additional comment is that just the Planning Commission made very clear what things they wanted in the buyer beware statement, and just and we're supposed to be furnished with a copy of that once it is finished. I don't know if this commission is going to, or board is going to review that or not, or whether that's just something that, because it was in the Planning Commission, is
It's between, staff will handle that.
Okay.
We're not reviewing that.
I didn't think so. I just wanted to check.
Are you here representing?
I'm here representing the school district. No,
Okay.
not the school. I'm representing the school district, which owns the property.
The school district, okay.
I have one question for you, if I might ask.
Sure.
The wall that's being proposed here is going to be not exceeding 8 feet from the school district side of the wall. In your discussions with the developer applicant, did they talk about how it was going to be finished?
They did not talk about how it was to be finished. On the opposite side, we had a proposed development, and it is just it's designated right now, it's just a CMU block wall.
Do you have any concerns about having a block wall versus a vegetated wall?
The vegetated wall, could be a concern depending on what is planted there, because like the city, the district has limited gardening resources, and so if something is planted on that side that is high maintenance, that may be a concern. Typically, we don't like vegetation on chain link fences, but we don't mind it up against a block wall. And if they're going to plant something on their side that typically comes over the top of a wall, where we just have to do some trimming or something like that, that's totally acceptable. Otherwise, the district would be doing something on their side eventually, based on what our site gardeners were able to maintain, or with what the school decided to maintain. We're more, from my point of view, from the facilities part, we're more interested in something that is separation, solid, and permanent. If the wall was plastered on one side, or whatever you feel would be appropriate, that would be fine.
Is the school district concerned about graffiti on the wall? Or that's not an issue because you guys take care of it quickly?
That's always an issue, and landscaping does sometimes. It's a catch-22.
Okay.
You want to discourage the graffiti, and then you want to also be able to address the maintaining of the facilities so it looks decent and it's not turned into a weed patch or something like that. Graffiti is an ongoing problem. We try and address that daily with both the maintenance crews and the school custodians, and if graffiti became a problem on a wall, then we'd have to figure out what are the steps we can take to discourage that, and that may in the future be something of the district addressing some type of vegetation along there. At some point in time, that may be.
I have one last question. Would the district have a problem if the board made a request for the applicant to put landscaping on your side of the property?
No, we would not be objected to that.
Okay.
I have two quick questions for you, if I may.
Sure.
Is it correct to say that the last of these homes is going to be the closest to the kindergarten area at the school?
The first or second home in, I think it's the second home in, is the closest, I think, across from the building.
Okay.
This is the kindergarten, and this is the closest.
Okay, so that one. And my second question is, you mentioned something that we're not going to talk about right now, and I forget, I don't know what it is, but does that include something about parking patrol on the street, or any type of restricted time zone parking or anything like that?
I haven't thought about that, to tell you the truth. I know that there's a lot of places that the city council has parking by permit for residents of that street only, and I don't know if that would be appropriate for this street, not being that familiar with who all parks on there, because there are commercial properties up at the other end of the street also, besides just the residences that are further down towards us. My concern was mainly of the routine parking in the school district parking lot for the residents, because there was not adequate parking on site or in the street to address their normal everyday parking.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So, Ed Gamble, followed by Nika Gwynn.
Hi, Ed Gamble, 320 Lighthouse Road. In and of itself, I think it's a fantastic design. Essentially, it's its own little Eden. And once the buffer zones have been built, there doesn't seem to have been really any consideration to whether it blends in with the neighborhood or not. It's like we built a buffer, so now we can build what we want. The houses are sized out of sync, totally out of sync with the neighborhood around Washington School. The number of stories are totally out of sync with the neighborhood around Washington School. And the architectural design has nothing to do with the Mesa, absolutely zero to do with the Mesa. So it seems as if they've said, we've built a buffer and now we don't need to worry about the neighborhood anymore. And that doesn't feel as if that's the kind of a community we want to have. We have kids, we want to encourage kids to walk to school. We want the kids to have a feeling of, this is our neighborhood. These are houses that belong to our neighborhood. These are part of our community. This isn't it. This is its own little Eden with buffer zones to, mollify the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Are we allowed to ask questions?
Not really. I mean, Mr. Hetjunk was different because he's a school district, and I'm sorry I asked him a question, but thank you for asking or answering. But we shouldn't get into other speakers. Nika Gwynn, followed by Walter Dukes.
So I'm Nika Gwynn at 313 Salida del Sol.
Is this one?
Yes, that house there. So our main concern is, as I mentioned, that our bedroom is on the second story, literally right adjacent to the development. And that looking into those windows, you can actually see all the way through to the bathroom too. And I don't want to be in a situation where I have to keep the curtains closed at all times. And so I'm really concerned about, you know, whether there could be landscaping, not just at the end of that public walkway, but also on, as you discussed earlier, the
Here and here?
yeah, to block both the view of our backyard and also into our bedroom. That's our primary concern, the privacy. And I have one other question, if possible. What kind of a wall is planned for that
We'll have
side?
to ask because I forgot already.
Okay, because right now we actually have a gate, a garden gate, that leads right onto here. So theoretically would lead right onto the common area. Our preference would be if there was a way of keeping that garden gate so that we could also have access and, you know, walk through to there. That would be fantastic. I don't know if that would be possible, so I'm interested in finding out about that.
We'll ask.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
Walter Dukes, followed by Natasha Campbell.
My name is Dr. Walter Dukes. I represent the 1809 Cliff Drive Property Owners Association, which is
It's a commercial building?
Commercial building on the corner of Cliff Drive and Lighthouse.
Can I put that right here?
And commercial.
That is correct.
Okay.
I developed that building 22 years ago. And the principal reason I'm here today is because I've enjoyed, and the other members of our association have enjoyed, views of the ocean over this property over those 22 years. This property and its development threatens that enjoyment. And I know that there is some sensitivity with the city, but not a lot, when it comes to view easement. My preference, of course, would be one-story homes. Is there a height limitation on this property for the homes?
I would say the height limitation is 30 feet for a two-story house, as long as it's under 85% FAR.
I see. Now, of course, my preference would be 25 feet. And then the other issue is the wonderful canopy of 30-some palms that are going to be growing up there. And these palms will eventually obliterate the view that we enjoy of the ocean. So my request would be that some sensitivity be given to the views that we enjoy and the height of those palms in particular, that there might be some limitation on the height of the foliage that would be employed in this project.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Were these your photographs, or were they... Okay. Natasha Campbell, followed by David, but he already spoke. Natasha will be our last speaker.
Thank you. Natasha Campbell, and I'm on the Facilities Committee for the Washington PTO, which is like a PTA. And we started commenting on this project in 2006, and primarily because we wanted to make sure that when it was developed, that it would be done in a way that would minimize the potential for nuisance complaints. Even with the units that are across Lighthouse and only next to our parking lot, we have gone through different periods of time when we've had to expend energy dealing with complaints from that, and that was only from noise from people talking in the parking lot in the morning. So things like bells and screaming, there's 80 screaming.
I don't think you need to worry about that. That's a planning commission issue, and they have the buyer beware statements that are going to go with the house when they're sold. So that issue is kind of not part of what we're doing. We're talking about the architecture and the quality of the design and the landscaping.
Actually, I'm a land use planner, and the reason that we brought it up was because it does affect, we were hoping that the project would be built in a way that would address that. Not just to tell people there's planes that fly over you, because as soon as the planes fly over, even though they signed something saying they knew it, they get mad about it anyway. So, and I think that the applicant has actually addressed, if I understand correctly, our main concerns about having the wall rather than the fence, because the wall really does help to reduce noise more, having a solid barrier rather than the spaced wood on the decks. And on the one question on the landscaping was whether along the wall, whether is it not someplace where it could be just some hard to kill hedge like Pittosporum or Myoporum that just won't die, and it will, it being on the north side of the wall, behind the wall, and also in an area where there's the bioswale will, and because I'm not familiar with that particular tree and what it looks like as far as screening, is that a good, will it provide some good screening? It's not at all, we have not asked that there be screening to the point where those homes would have any of their ocean view impinged on, but just that there's sort of an out of sight, out of mind if there's a lot of noise down below, but you don't see everybody running around screaming, that maybe you won't notice it as much.
We'll look into that.
You can hear, we have lots of parents that live 2 or 3 blocks away, and when they hear the bell, they walk to school. So these are set back. It's certainly going to help to reduce the noise. But, okay, I'm getting cut off. Anyway, those were just in there. It was condition number 12A and B mainly that we were commenting on. And just to mimic Dave Hatyonk's comment about parking, there really isn't parking on Lighthouse. There's restricted parking 2 times a day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? If not, we're going to be about 10 minutes more, maybe 15 to the next item. We're running a little late, but this is a big project, so I want to give this project good time, quality time. So board members, don't feel rushed. And we have back to the board for questions of the applicant.
Mr. Chair, if I might just acknowledge a few letters for the record.
Forgot that part.
We had a letter from Ed Gamble, who spoke today, a letter from Nika and Michael Gwynn, who spoke today, a letter from Natasha Campbell, who just spoke, and a letter of concern from Ms. Paula Westbury.
Thank you very much. So, does the board have questions of the applicant about the proposal in front of us?
Yes, I have a question.
Mr. Miller.
Where the private landscaping is, where you have the private yards, are you going to have some kind of CC&R stipulation as to the control of that? Because you may have new owners that don't like to do yard work, and I'd feel if you had a private owner with a private yard, it may compromise all the efforts you make in the public areas. Are you going to have some way of addressing that?
Really, probably not have a perfect answer for you, but it's the kind of thing that would be addressed in the CC&Rs, and we haven't, quite gotten to develop those yet. But clearly, that's a concern that affects all of the residents there, and so there will be some mechanism in the CC&Rs to be sure that people just as they're required to maintain their houses and all of that.
My feeling is that even though it is single family, it's a very high scale condominium kind of feel. I mean, you've got a single unit, yet you've got all this common area landscaping, so you want to really make sure that the quality is maintained in the entire development. So
it's a good comment, and one that we'll continue to discuss as we come back.
I want to tag on to that question and ask staff: do they need to bring a landscape plan for the private areas with us in order for us to give them final at some point?
Chair, that's actually where the distinction between their subdivision plan and then the individual home plans comes in. We would need an approved common landscape plan, but then when each home comes in for their development, you'll want to look at their private landscaping. So they're separate but required.
Okay. Does the board understand that? Cool. Any other questions?
Concerns that I'm having, and I'm wondering why, along the, where's the north arrow on this? Well, along the border toward this woman's home, it's the eastern border.
Yes.
Okay, the eastern side. The private areas go right up to the wall, and I'm just wondering why there wasn't a common area strip held out along that edge so that you could indeed put the screening that I believe will be necessary to buffer from the neighbors. Is it a requirement, their open yard requirement, that made that call, or could it possibly be like a 6-foot or 5-foot strip along there retained as common area?
That's an interesting thought. Certainly there are private yard requirements, and not only in terms of the size of the private yard, but also the dimensions. They have to be 20 feet in both directions. And so there's really that's a limitation for those yards for certain. But I think we can address that, and we will be giving it some thought as to how to address it in such a way that it's part of a landscape plan. And then, as I think as staff just pointed out, we will apparently be required to come back with the private area landscape plans for the individual homes in any event. So I think we can address it without having to create a kind of an alley back there of landscaping. So.
Bernie.
Just one question now, and that is on the entrances. So that one, this is where the cars come in, correct?
Mm-hmm.
For this side. Is there a gate there, and is there any kind of a gate there? Can the public, for example, somebody wants to go stroll and sit at the fountain, which I guess is possibly going to, is that a public place?
Well, it will be private property, but there's not going to be any gates that make it sort of a gated community or anything. That's not the intent. I mean, so conceivably someone could sit there, but I don't. Again, I think in essence it still ends up being private property, not a public right of way.
I got a couple of quick questions. Does anybody else have anything right now? You want to go?
Sure. Could you kind of go over the paving materials for the various courtyards briefly?
Yeah, our intent is to use colored concrete with a salt finish for the sidewalks all through the common area there.
I know you can't predict the future, but is this project going to be phased out as far as each lot? I guess what I'm getting at is the common area going to go in and all at the same time? Or is that going to be phase two?
We haven't fully addressed that with the developer in terms of exactly what the sequence is going to be. I think they'll probably be building the homes in some kind of sequence, and it may very well be that they will do the common area as part of that sequence. Obviously, if there are going to be some homes finished, the common area wants to be finished as well. Maybe Whit has it in.
The common area comes in before the map can be recorded.
Good point. So there you go. Got the answer.
No.
The common area will be fully incorporated before the map can be recorded, so we really can't start building the homes until that's done. So.
I'd like to tag on one thing about this issue of the common area and the private property issue. I mean, the intent was to make this an inviting space for people that are coming to visit, people that live there, or kids coming over to play. There's a little lawn area there, and that's really the whole intent, was to have it be a very inviting place.
Did staff have something?
I did. I just wanted to add there was a specific condition to address that, and it states that all common area landscaping must be installed prior to issuance of any certificate of occupancy. So before the first home can have occupancy, all the common area must be installed.
I've got a couple of questions for you. We talked about exterior site lighting. Are there going to be any ballards or anything at this end, at this point, or you'll get to it later?
I think we're going to be getting to that later. Again, the intent here is to keep it very low key, and whatever we end up, we may have some landscape lighting and then some lighting on the buildings themselves.
Okay. In the Planning Commission thing, there's talk about the trees that are being removed. There are a couple of oaks, and then there's one olive tree that's going to be relocated. Where are the oak trees being planted, and how are you using them? And how did you decide that the existing 17-inch or whatever this olive tree got to be here?
Yes. That's the location of the tree the olive to be relocated. This is that, yeah. This is the location of the relocated.
Oh, this is the old location. This is the new location.
Correct.
Okay. And what about the oaks?
I don't remember anything about oaks.
Isn't it like a 3-to-1 or?
Yeah, I think it's definitely that's the replacement is 3-to-1 typically, but I don't recall.
Not at this time.
We'll come back.
It's something we'll have to look into.
Yeah.
Okay. What are your plate heights on your architecture? First floor, second floor, you're 27-ish feet tall. How did you come
That's
about
correct.
that?
The first floor is got a 10-foot plate, and the second floor has 9 foot or less, depending on the permutations of the roof plans. I guess I should add that the The 27-ish is to the very peak, as you can see, and there's substantial one-story portions of each building.
And assuming like a 12-inch floor joist, 16 at the most?
Right, yeah,
Okay.
12 to 15. And so, again, with the sweeping this design of some of the permutations, the plates go down to 7.6 in the second story.
Okay. Last question. Are you planning on doing any kind of landscaping on the school district side of the wall, or right now at this point you're planning on just keeping it a plaster wall?
Well, we had not planned on it. We hadn't been asked to do it either, so...
And that's something that the city council or the planning commission is aware of, that it's a block wall that's just going to be plastered, and they made no requirement, or is it kind of up to us to decide if it's necessary as a discussion item?
Yeah, it really never came
Okay.
up at the planning commission.
Cool. That's all the questions I had written down. Does anybody else have anything? And if not, let's give them some comments. I'll jump in since no one jumped in first. First comment, unfortunately for the neighbor, if she's still here, there, okay, I guess I don't have the same concerns you have about your window, even though if it was my house I'd have concerns. When we look at second-story decks, we like to have decks 15 feet away on the second floor. And they're more than 15 feet away, so their decks and the privacy that they're going to be imposing on your backyard is something that we tolerate all around town. It's when it's less than 15 feet that we have a concern with decks encroaching on other people's backyard. So I hear what you're saying, and I understand your concerns, because if it was my house, I would have them, but I have a difficulty making above and beyond requirements of the applicant for this location when the decks are clearly far enough away that they're not impinging an exorbitant amount, even though it was a vacant lot and all this other kinds of stuff. That's just how I feel about this one area and discussions about increasing the landscaping in this part. But that's just me, and I'm just one person.
Mr. Chair, I'll have a couple comments. I think additional screening there is a good thing, and when we get to the private yards, I think we'll be looking forward to seeing that screening. But one thing that was spoke about was this larger area of concrete that was located here, and there was some discussion about that being maybe a gathering space for the community. And I think that might be unfortunate to put a gathering space right next to a neighbor of concern. So I would maybe have the applicant study either reducing that gathering space to be just sort of a circulation area, and maybe put the gathering space somewhere else, a little further away from the adjacent property. Comments regarding the architecture. The 10-foot plate on the first floor and 9 on the second does seem a little strong for a Mesa house that are, I would say, relatively close together here. So I would be liking a reduction in the plate heights. And going to the architectural elevations. I think in general there's a nice variety of designs. I'm still having difficulty with the style. One of the neighbors spoke about it not being compatible with the typical Mesa house, and there are some Spanish houses in the Mesa. There's no question about that. But this is sort of a large grouping, and I think that the scale would be helped in the neighborhood if the houses were broken down with maybe a more wood or shingle look, just a softer palette. This one elevation in particular really got my attention. It seemed to be a very large, massive side elevation. And because of the proximity of all of the neighbors, or the other lots, I was disappointed at that one to see if we could break it down in scale a little bit more. But I guess the style is the biggest thing for me, is looking at it a little more relaxed look than the plaster. and Spanish look of Santa Barbara. Those are my general comments.
Anybody else?
I have a comment.
Mr. Miller.
I actually really like the development. I actually feel that the style actually is consistent. I think of what they did of the massive redesign of the shopping center of the Spanish style. So I think that is the trend. I feel that this development also will create a huge impact in the area, increasing the value of adjacent properties. So I think it's a very positive impact, though I do agree with Glenn that the plate heights are probably a little too tall. That perhaps the first floor being 9 feet, 9 feet, 8 feet, perhaps, as opposed to 10 feet, 9 feet. I think, and as a possibility for the wall, maybe we plant a vine on your side that kind of grows over into the school side, so they don't have to be responsible for the maintenance of the landscaping, yet it covers it in like a trumpet vine type situation. Otherwise, I think it reminds me of a Spanish village. I think not putting gates is a good idea. Keep it open, and so it's part of it's incorporated in the neighborhood. It kind of reminds me of looking down that street in San Simeon, in old San Simeon. The Spanish homes, that is a really wonderful feeling there. So I'd encourage you to look that and have that feel for this development too. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Next. I'm sorry, Aaron first, then Jim.
Good. Okay, I'll go. Overall, I like the style of the development. The condos across the street are compatible in some way to this project. I like the street elevation along Lighthouse Road. I like how you've incorporated some one-story there. The elevation from the interior of courtyards, some of the buildings feel a little straight up and down and top heavy to me. As far as the private yard screening issue, maybe we address that when the private yards come in, but I'd like to get that in the minutes so we don't forget to have screening particularly at the eastern edge of the property. I feel that the courtyards could be maybe detailed a little more in the Spanish motif rather than just rectangles. Maybe take a look at the details of the paving and give us a little more richness. I feel the palms on the project are a bit heavy. Maybe there's some spots where canopy trees might be more appropriate. And maybe if we're going to do palms, maybe more variety of different types of palms than just two types. On the architectural elevations, I saw some vine pockets between the garage doors, but I didn't see that on the landscape plan, so maybe look at that. And I think those are my comments.
Okay, Jim.
Yeah, I think the design is laid out very well. I was a little concerned about the full 3-bedroom, 2-story, where all of them have pretty much the same mat on the second floor. And I'm wondering if you could maybe take one of the bedrooms and put it on the...
Time out for a second. This microphone needs to be that way audio. Don't mind. Can we do it like this?
Okay.
There we go.
If you could possibly... there's a few areas where you might be able to pick up a little more 1-story and get a little variety in the 2-story. Also, I think it'd be nice if you incorporated other materials, especially where you have the 1-story. You could go with something that would represent, board and bat or plywood and bat like in the early Spanish houses. And I think by introducing texture like that, I think you can get more definition between houses. Also, all the houses are clipped overhangs with a rolled tile on the edge. I think it'd be nice to maybe get more variety, and some of the houses possibly have overhangs and open beams, just to get a variety.
Thank you. Bernie spoke. Denise, do you have anything else to add? Oh, you haven't. I'm sorry.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with, I guess, Glenn and Jim, that I think we really need to study the height and the plate heights of some of these, and I'm thinking one of the things that I had written down, maybe some 2 stories and some 1 stories, just because of compatibility of the neighborhood. I know this project has been studied for years and years, and I really appreciate how far we've come. I remember when it was 12 units, and I remember the little triplex, so I've been familiar with how this has been processing, and I appreciate all the neighbors coming too. As far as whether the Spanish design is appropriate or not, I think it's important to look at what's in the neighborhood. So if you look at, well, the Villa Mesa, the pink condos are sort of Spanish style. Reef Court is across Meigs Road, as well as, well, Villa Mesa, and there are quite a number of Spanish style newer developments. So I think I could support that, but I think the problem is it's so excessive. It's such a major change to the neighborhoods. We're not just looking at one single-family home. We're looking at 8 single-family homes, and yes, they're under 85% barely of the FAR, but they're a lot bigger and a lot taller than almost anything else around it. So that's where I'm thinking maybe it would be a nice balance to have some of these larger ones. They are going to be gorgeous, but also maybe bring some of them down to a single story or at least a smaller scale. And that, I think, is really critical for our board to talk about too. And what else did I have? Oh, the other question I think our board should talk about is whether we feel that all 8 of them being Spanish style is compatible and meets our guidelines, or whether maybe some of them one style and some of them another style would be more compatible with the neighborhood.
Okay.
Yeah.
Denise?
Yes, I find the project to be very well thought out already. I think the Spanish style is in keeping with the Mesa and with Santa Barbara in general. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing them, as Glenn mentioned, something like the Sea Ranch, or some wooden siding type of an effect. But you've gone this direction. This is what's on the table, and it's not offensive to me. I would be concerned about the screening on the eastern side is my biggest concern. And also I agree with that the area for recreation should be taken away from the eastern property line and maybe put where the lawn area is instead, more centrally located, so that it will not disturb the neighbors to the east.
If that's all you have, I'm just going to wrap up by saying I like the project. It's very well designed. I personally see enough variation in the architecture. There's room for enhancement, but I'm fine with the direction it's all going. The landscaping plan is what I'm going to be zeroing in on the most, because the landscaping that's being lost is going to be offset by the landscaping that you're adding. So I think it's going the right direction. The plate heights that other people talked about, I agree they need to be lowered, but that's just your next iteration of drawings. So as a discussion for the board, I want to know that the board as a whole is okay with the style of architecture that is being presented here, and they're fine with it continuing the way they're going. A couple of people wanted to say maybe a couple one-stories, if that's something we need to talk about. If you want to suggest that as an option, I want to know what the other board members, if they have strong feelings. We heard Bernie on their concern.
Yeah, I have a comment. I feel that if we do introduce another style of architecture, it doesn't work. I've seen past developments where if you do try to push in something different, it really doesn't look good. You want to stay consistent. It really is far more successful. If you ever look at landscapes, even in this room, this is all a consistent style. It's not, they're not introducing something new and strange. It's all, and it's very successful. So I think they are going in the right direction as far as consistency, compatibility, and the whole makeup of the development, I think, would be very nice.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, just a couple of quick comments. One is just in
Just
the
make them brief.
in the context of which Mr. Miller just mentioned. We were kind of inspired by Plaza Rubio, which is just such a treasure in Santa Barbara of houses that are very different, each different a little, but yet there's this just wonderful kind of coherent feeling there and continuity. And that's really our goal here. So we really want to kind of stay with the style. Not to say that we're not open to some of the suggestions of exploring some other materials, etc. The gathering area, that was really a misnomer. It's not meant to be a gathering. It's just we were thinking a bench at the terminus of that thing. So it's a place where someone could sit quietly and just enjoy the little garden there. And then we'll certainly just study the comments regarding the plate heights and some of the other comments that were made when we come back. Thank you.
Back to the board. Questions Bernie made reference to suggesting we entertain encourage them to, for a couple one-story, to break up the massing.
I got a comment on that.
That's good. You can hold that for a moment. What do other board members feel about that? And
Mr. Chair, before the comment, may I just make a point about it that's without a piece of information that if you don't have it, it's not going to be helpful. And that is that we are very constrained within these building envelopes and the private yard requirements and providing the public the common walk street open space. So what we have done is tried to maximize the one-story element as much as possible without compromising our other requirements.
Okay. I have my own opinion too, but I wanted to hear from the other board members.
Thank you.
We heard from Bernie. Does people have a concern with the two-story massing blocking of the proposed development?
I'll make a comment. I don't have a big objection to all 2 stories, but I think that it should be broken up a little bit more than I saw on that one particular elevation where you have a long wall and just a 2-story wall of plaster. So I think if it's done well, I don't have a concern, especially if we're reducing some of the play heights down. I think all 2 stories there would be appropriate.
Yeah. And I personally am okay with the 2-story massing too. I think what would be beneficial is to have a plan that shows where the 2-story elements are, because right now when we look at this, we think the whole darn thing is all 2-story. Some of us can read the plan and understand that there's 1 story here and a 2-story here and there's 2 stories back here. Not everyone can understand that. The massing is important and the plate heights is important. Do you have anything to add, Jim?
I don't have a problem with the 2-story, but I think it'd be great if you could study in a couple of the houses, maybe bring some of that 2-story down to the 1st story, so that all the masses aren't all the same, all the ridge heights aren't all the same, so that when you look at it, you have less square footage on the 2nd floor on some of the units.
And with that thought, you do see that this is one floor plan that's repeated 6 times, and that the orientation and the fenestration is different.
Right.
And that these are just mirrored images, so they want to stay with one floor plan for economics. So. Okay, so we address style, we address the single-storyness of the project. Does someone want to make a motion?
Can I just make a request that when you do come back, what would really help me understand it would be some photographs or visual, because it's going to be walled and it's going to be sticking right out there. So how does that blend in with the houses next to it, and then there's the school over there, so maybe the overall neighborhood landscape would be helpful
We
to
did
me.
submit photographs, but we'll
Okay.
make sure that we have them available.
Okay. So we're ready to make a motion to move on.
Mr. Chair?
Ooh,
Just
yes.
Before you move into that motion, related to that comment, one of the conditions of approval is that the SFDB is provided with computer depictions of the project to really help you get a sense of that massing, because the Planning Commission was also concerned about, from the walk street, how that massing would feel.
So that was a condition for preliminary approval, so we didn't have that, so we can't do that.
We're not giving it.
This is concept review.
We have they've all been modeled in SketchUp, so we can provide you with lots of different 3D views, and that I think will address a lot of the concern about the modulation of the uphill facade. It's really more crenellated, if you will, more varied than it appears in the elevation. So.
Okay, we're ready to move on. Glenn is reviewing his notes.
So I'll give it a shot. Basically, we're just making a motion for indefinite continuance.
Back to
for the
full board.
applicant to study, and we'll go down the list of the items, or address the items. Back to full board. I think the majority of the members of the board would like a reduction in the plate heights of the buildings. I think we need to have photo documentation of the neighborhood for some of the board members. I think it would be helpful. The computer-generated modeling, if you could bring that back to the next board. Well, there's basic lighting that's going to come.
Landscape?
Yeah, I was going to ask about, Aaron made a comment about the palm trees, and if he felt strong about that, to have them study a different type of tree, canopy tree, rather than all palms, or different species of palms that you spoke about.
I think David heard my comments, I think.
Study that.
I'd like to study that.
We love studying things.
I think we didn't take a straw poll, but I think the majority of the board members were fine with the architectural style, so that going into the...
I believe we are, as a board.
That going into the record is kind of nice. And Paul had talked about maybe a plan that depicts the two-story elements on the plan.
Roof plans.
I think that would be, or another shaded area that says this area is 2 stories or not. Additional landscaping comments that...
There was a comment about additional detailing for the courtyards.
You said we had a nice word. More richness?
Yeah, more design.
Yeah, I mean, if the architectural style is Spanish, that would be very appropriate to bring in some Spanish elements of landscape. Yes. I think there's been enough comments about this that to design it in such a way it's not a gathering space. That's probably vague enough. And I'll just stop at that and we'll probably talk some more.
Okay, I'll second that, and I do have a couple of comments. First of all, let's see, am I on here? When you come back, is it possible, I know there's some people who are very concerned about the view being blocked completely, and we can't really help with that very much, except maybe if you could show, maybe if there's some of them are higher and some of them are lower, maybe there still might be somewhat of a view. And the same thing for the neighbor who's concerned about Salida del Sol, and if you could just show a depiction of how far that 15-foot deck will be, then maybe that will make the neighbors feel more comfortable with it. And thank you.
So can you say that in like one sentence for the motion? How about an overall elevation from the north side of the unit from the driveway, so we can see how all the buildings and the space in between? And then you want to see on the east elevation, the joint elevation. You want
Yeah,
a
because
15-foot
there's a lot more neighbors than just the one who's here today. So yeah, we'd like to see how that's going to impact that whole neighborhood.
So maybe the motion should be a combined elevation for both the east from the south and from the all four houses together, kind of like in a strip elevation. Okay. I had one comment to add, and that was for the landscape person to study the placement of the oak trees for the Planning Commission requirements. Denise.
I'm looking at the plan page here, which is a tree demo plan. And as I look at this, there's only one oak tree that's being demoed. I don't see any others in question. Most everything's a eucalyptus tree, pepper tree, myoporum.
I wasn't really aware of the oak tree.
It was
Just
in the
olive.
Planning Commission.
It says the oak tree.
Yeah, okay.
There's only one oak tree. Oh, I just want to be clear about that.
We'll handle it.
Yeah, so there's just 3 oak trees you need to put on the land.
Okay.
So.
Doesn't fit with the palm trees.
Good. Any other discussion? If not, we'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Indefinite continuance.
Thank you very
Put yourself
much.
back on when you're ready. Good. We'll start with item 3 in about 3 minutes. Let's just gather our stuff.
Yeah, I knew he was trying to sell it. I always built the garage. Cool. Yeah, that was a while ago. Yeah, all I heard was he was trying to sell it. He was trying to get
I think well, we're ready to move on. And hopefully the TV guy is still moving forward. This is item 3. We're supposed to start at 4:10 and it's now 4:45. We apologize. This is 1131 Los Pueblos Road. We've seen this project before.
Let me just give you this. This is
And
the revised proposal.
we have a revised proposal, which I will read for you all. The proposal is to demolish a 454 square foot floor area and construct an 806 square foot addition to an existing 2-story, 2,258 square foot single-family residence. The existing 1-car garage and 1-car carport will be replaced with an attached 471 square foot 2-car garage. The proposal involves conversion of the existing 400 square foot basement area into habitable garage and storage, resulting in a 242 square foot habitable basement. One redwood tree is proposed to be removed. A new retaining wall is proposed at the rear yard. The overall proposed total of 3,498 square feet on the 15,000 square foot lot in the Hillside Design District is 80% of the maximum guideline FAR. The project received staff hearing officer approval for the modification of the proposed deck and stairs to encroach into the required front yard setback. If I have your name for the record, and then we'll read the previous minutes.
I'm Brian Murphy.
Oops.
Yes, I have a colored set. Hopefully that's all right.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Bring some colors. It's a quarter-inch scale. It gets a little overwhelming without any colors. So
Okay. I forgot your name already.
Brian Murphy.
All right.
The architect on the project. You have seen this before. Oh, sorry.
And we'll do the minutes.
So, Mr. Chair, even though the description is different, that we're looking at a different project here, some of these comments from before probably still are applicable. Number 1, reduce the overall height and mass of the building. Number 2, reduce the proportions of the tower element and integrate and to fit the building. Number 3, diminish the expansiveness of the roof lines. Number 4, study solar panels to better fit the design. Number 5, provide a photo of the front redwood tree proposed for removal.
I believe you're reading the wrong. Yes.
We've already done that.
Yes, we've been through those. That's the. No, that is the right project, but that was the previous comments from.
Well, let's
the,
forget about that one, but all the other ones still apply. I remember the tower thing, and I remember the roof. And he must.
Yeah, we addressed all those comments at the last hearing. So we had comments from that last hearing, which were
This is what it's telling.
somehow those comments are carried over again from a previous meeting, I guess.
How about you get to go, and we'll get the minutes in a minute.
Okay. Well, the project was actually presented to you in the scope that it is previously as well. We had the data was wrong on the last time we saw it, but we've corrected that data. And as you saw it before, it is reduced in scale, and we restudied the roof slopes and brought that way down in that last presentation. What we were directed.
Can we go one floor plan at a
Sure, I was going to just jump to
that was the basement. Or you go.
Blue is new, yellow is the existing. So this is a house that has a garage below, and there's currently some habitable space below, a bedroom below. We're going to convert that bedroom into garage space, and we're having an elevator and a little bit of habitable space to have an elevator, some hallway, and a bath at the lower level, but no bedrooms anymore. And then up to the main floor of the house, we're doing an addition here on this wing of the house, and we're doing an addition here on this wing of the house. We're taking away part of the house that was here to create a covered patio area, and we're also taking away part of the house here that stuck out that we're not replacing. Okay. We did restudy the height of it and brought it down, and we also were asked again to restudy the tower. We restudied it once before, but we're studying it to simplify it a little bit, to make that transitional element a little simpler. We were asked to study the chimney and make that a little simpler as well. We had a more complicated form to the chimney, but we simplified that. We were asked to restudy this arch. We've lowered that, made that a little. We had a half-round arch previously. We've brought it down to a flatter arch like the other ones. We studied the massing of that a little bit.
You know what? We never had your microphone on. If you push that oval, the black, there you go. Sorry about that, guy. All right. But I remember what you said. No, keep going because we have the minutes to read.
So basically those were the areas that we were looking at, was the transition to the tower, the height of the tower itself, the way that integrated into the building, the element here at the entry, part of our entry arcade, to restudy that arched entry element, and restudy the chimney. And I believe that was the bulk of what we were directed to.
Well, let's read the minutes and see if there's anything else you need to add to the comments.
See what I've forgotten.
Mr. Chair, these are the minutes from the previous meeting. Show varied heights to the top ridge lines. Study the scale of the front entry arch. Simplify the tower and buttress. Study reducing the height of the chimney. Provide a landscape plan. Show gutters, downspouts, and leaders on the elevations. Provide a color board. The project will be consistent in appearance, and appearance will enhance the project will be consistent, and appearance will enhance the neighborhood. Development is compatible, provides quality architecture materials. It is understood that the redwood tree to be removed will be replaced with a new tree in the front yard.
Okay, how about the landscape plan?
You have a landscape plan here at the back. So this is where the redwood tree was coming out. We were looking to replace a number of palm trees in that area. We were looking to put an oak tree back in this area. If we put a large tree here, we lose our solar exposure, and especially if we leave this redwood tree, we had some discussion of whether to take that away or not. Mm-hmm. If we leave that there, we won't get a refund on our solar panels because they won't allow us to have a tree to the south and give us a refund. So We would really like to take that tree out.
So the replacement tree for this is not going to be in the front of the property, it's going to be in the back of the property?
In the back there to match the existing oak trees that wrap around the back of the property here. We think that it makes much more sense to be there rather than out in the view area. We do have a very large oak tree that exists down here, and that will remain. We really don't want something tall here. It obstructs our solar exposure. We did show gutters and downspouts. You see them on my roof plan and also in elevation. Walking around the building, I've done a system of putting some leader heads and running the downspouts down.
I think that's good. All right. I'll open up public comment. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this project? Seeing nobody, are there any letters?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do have one letter of concern from Ms. Paula Westbury.
All right. Return it back to the board for questions of the applicant. Before we have questions, or the first question is, can you please go over your color board? Red tile roof.
Red tile roof. Body color is a upside down. I'm not finding it.
You don't have it listed there. Plaster wall.
Rathline. So an off beige color. The windows are Pacific Hartford green, and the downspouts and some trim and garage doors, louvers, etc. are bicentennial.
We understand. Thank you.
The walls are the
sandstone.
Native sandstone.
Questions for the applicant?
On the site plan, there was some rectangles shown. Solar panel on the ground.
Rack-mounted solar panels was the direction the board had suggested, because we had them on the roof previously and felt it was overwhelming.
You don't have them on the roof anymore?
We have some.
You have both?
We cannot fit enough.
You have the black ones here as well as the ground mounted. So I have a question. This roof back here, what is its plate and its 7.5 and 12 roof pitch, and why is that the roof pitch versus these at either 3 and 12?
Well, the concept of the building was that it was a steeply sloped roof with
That's all new construction, correct?
With a broken pitch for the porch areas, or the arcade that wraps around the building. So looking for the roof plan. So the arcade wraps here around the building, and that is the lower slopes. The main slope is the 7.5 and 12 until it hits the ridge, and then for the backside, because it's such a deep building, it runs all the way back here again at the 3.5 and 12.
But this is 7.5 and 12.
Yes.
So what is its roof pitch relationship to this fascia? Because it was actually like 12 inches higher, so this is 8, this is 9, but I'm asking you, what is it, and why was this at 7.5 and 12?
It gave me some modulation of the roof elements. This also has a slightly higher plate. This is a 9-foot plate.
Is it 9?
The rest of the house is 8 foot. This addition is a 9-foot plate. This addition is an 8-foot plate.
Oh. Okay. That's my question.
Since everybody's so quiet, I just want to verify, is this the tree we're talking about?
Yes.
So we're moving that tree?
It is being removed.
We're removing that tree. We do have 2 other redwood trees on the site that we are leaving.
And they're in the back.
They're to the north of our roof.
So this is a question for staff then, because we just had this whole tree presentation. Is this something that the city's allowing, or it's okay?
basically he's in front of our board asking permission to remove this tree. He's explaining his reasons. I'm going to put solar panels on here because this is southwestern. They block the efficiency. The board says, what's the replacement? The replacement is this oak tree in this location, and we say it's comparable, and the board is okay. He
Or
can...
can we say, can the tree be trimmed, or does it have to be completely
Mr. Chair, this project did receive preliminary approval already.
with that? Okay.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Next time.
Well, we actually did talk about it, and I believe we went through the paces on it because we don't arbitrarily cut down trees, but we'll try not to.
I have a question.
Jim?
Then that's all attic area up there, where you have the 7 to 12 slope?
Yes.
So if you went to a lower slope, you would be able to lower that ridge by the tower if you went to a lower slope?
Are you talking about this back ridge?
No,
or this,
that.
This one?
Yes. Yes, we could.
It seems to be a lot of mass there.
We
On
lowered
the
it
roof.
once before, and we actually reviewed that, and we actually had preliminary approval with this height as well.
Mhm.
So we actually have been through that to a certain point already as well. And we
almost-
do need to keep some slope for solar efficiency. But
Any other questions? And then we'll go to comments.
Do you have a detail for the gate at the front yard?
not at this point. We are back for an in-progress review.
Mr. Chair?
Denise?
I'm just curious about, on the landscape plan, the location of your subgrade rainwater storage tank that's fed by roof drain lines. It's pretty far away from the house, and also under an oak tree. So I'm thinking that may not be the best spot for it, and under a walkway.
Yeah, it probably needed to move, and it just hasn't.
It just hasn't moved yet. I gotcha. Okay. And then also, what's the possibility of a much lower, say, small flowering tree in the spot where that redwood was? Something that just seems like such a strange, big, wide open area there that sort of screams for an accent tree. Can you not have something lower that
We can.
that might?
We could do an accent tree.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on to comments, if there are no more questions.
I have a comment.
Mr. Miller?
I like what he did. I think he's come a long way with the house. And granted, the roof is a little unorthodox, but I think it works. I like the front entryway. I can see it. I like the way the tower's been reduced in scale. I think it kind of looks more compatible with the house. So overall, I have positive comments on the house.
All right. Anybody else?
At our last meeting, where do you call out the heights of the ridges?
I haven't yet.
I think we had asked that you call out the height of the ridges, of the overall height. I guess the plate heights are shown there, but not the
Right.
not the overall heights.
I should have shown that. I'm sorry. I forgot to do that. But
How high is that ridge?
I also don't have my scale. But
Did you figure from the low side or high side?
That would be a nice view, or that'll be a nice view, but you like,
Yeah.
hate to say 27 how? 27 feet?
26.
26?
Pretty good.
What's the height?
26. Sorry.
26.
Comments or Aaron?
I think you've done a pretty good job of responding to our comments. The front entryway I still think is a little grandiose, but that's just me. The steps, I was just wondering if you could go to the floor plan for those steps.
Floor or site plan?
That's fine right there. If it's going to be this wide, maybe think about putting a planter there, kind of softening that and making that maybe less grandiose. A couple comments on the landscape plan would be to add plantings in the retention basin, since that's getting graded. The citrus trees at the bottom of the basin, I don't think you're going to do well there. I want to reconsider that. And add container sizes and plant quantities on the final plan.
Okay. I've got, and I understand you've got preliminary approval, and I don't remember what the motions are, but I guess I'm struggling with this part of the architecture, and I'm not happy with it, but if enough other people think we're happy to move on, then that's fine. But
it's way back.
It doesn't look good. It's just as simple as that. It doesn't look good, and I'm sorry if I'm being a little harsh. I understand. I mean, the 7.5 and 12. There's no reason for it. I mean, this elevation and the modulation, it bothers me, and it's not finesse. And little tiny things. But if we have a 6'8" header here with an 8-foot plate, and we have a 9-foot plate, and we keep that at 6'8", there's an opportunity of actually having taller windows in here if you have a taller ceiling in there. And there's something wrong with the architecture, and I keep on wanting to pull this down below it, even though I know it's the master bedroom on the other side, and this is the master bathroom. But architecturally, it bothers me, and it's not finessed well. So that's my comment. And then the other thing is that square. Either have a square or make a statement, or don't make a statement. But that's like, it's just too insignificant. I don't know, something's weird. But so I'm having difficulty with the project. You hear for in progress comments, and my comments are the architecture still needs to be refined in those areas. But that's just me.
Mr. Chair. The pitch bothers me more than the plate height there, but it got preliminary approval. We'll just keep pointing at it. But we talked about this like from the very beginning, because I think you even needed a mod to do this, so it's pretty close. I think there maybe are better solutions there. One, the way it's plastered and comes and hits on a stone wall, I think if that was stone, it would be better. And then two, if it wasn't all up to the guardrail height, solid, meaning if you just went up to your tread height, the massing would be so much reduced and it wouldn't be in your face from the street. So if this was a wrought iron railing and stone, I think it would integrate and feel so much better there. That's my major comment.
Denise.
I totally agree with Vernon. And one other point is that when we were scaling that out, the bottom step, it's like 12 feet wide. I mean, it seems like an overkill for the stairway. In the Spanish type feel, they wouldn't have something like that. They would have a much narrower stair. So it might be something just to get that element kicked back a little bit.
Okay. So how do we want to move forward?
Does he have to come back here again?
He's in progress, so we could make comments and go straight to the consent for final.
I'd like to make a motion for preliminary approval.
He already has preliminary.
Basis to return to the full board with three. Can we ask for three study three things, which would be the size and bulk and materials of this front section stairway. Number two would be, Paul, you say it.
to just study the roof pitch of the master bedroom addition.
Okay, study that, roof pitch. And the third one, actually there's 4, study the little window and how it fits into the design. And number 4, and finally, is study the height of the highest point and see about possibly bringing it down.
Okay, is there a person who wants to second that?
Well, I just want to add a comment. I think what the board is uncomfortable with is the inconsistency of the slope. So if you can probably make all the same slope, try to get that, yet break up the roof, but keep the same slope rather than having this drastic 7.5, 12, and then a 3.5. I mean, that's my only comment to help you.
Well, we need someone to second it, and then we can have further discussion about the motion.
I second it.
You second it. And
Further discussion? I think Bernie made mention to a window here. I don't think it is a window.
no, it's just a tile accent.
Tile. I think there's other tile accents around. That's all he's matching.
Question that I want to ask the board members, and the motion was to return back to full board studying these items. Is the board comfortable in saying study these items, return for final on consent? Or does the board really, because the project has received preliminary approval for what we're looking at. So to require him to reduce this plate significantly is challenging for us because we already gave him preliminary, even though the minutes did say to study the roof ridge elevations.
Well, I'm a little uncomfortable. I think he's come back to us enough times. I feel like it should be on consent, I guess.
So you're the seconder. So it goes back to Bernie saying, are you okay with saying study these things and return to final on consent, or do you really feel like it should come back to full board?
I'm okay with that.
Final on consent.
I mean, we'd be happy to make this go to 3.5 and 12. We'd be happy to go to 6.5 and 12 and come back on consent.
Okay.
Because I think we would have to make the compatibility. We've already done that, right? Okay. And the colors, we're
The
good
colors
with the
are
colors,
fine.
yeah.
So is there any other Oh, Aaron?
I'm okay with it going to consent if we get some of the comments I made about the landscape.
Why don't you add them and ask the person to include them?
Remove the citrus trees at the bottom of the retention basin. Add container sizes and quantities for all plant material. Provide a gate detail for the pedestrian gate at the street. And add grasses or ground covers at the retention basin.
In the accent tree.
And the accent tree in the front.
Did you just say container sizes or?
Container sizes and quantities.
And the accent tree was here. Thank you for reminding us. Because it makes it a better building.
It makes sense. Yes.
Okay. So that's the motion. It's to return to final on consent with those comments. Anything else? I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. And thank you for working with us. Sorry about the delay.
Thank you.
That's hers. We're now on to item 4. 4:35, so it's about a half hour, not bad. This is 1253 Dover Lane. We've seen this project before. We've seen the project before, but a different applicant.
Same person. Yeah.
Yeah. You happen to have the minutes from the last time you were here?
No, I don't have them on me.
We'll get them printed and
Okay.
we'll catch up.
All right.
So do you want to announce your name for the record?
Yes, Tim Mason, the owner at 1253 Dover Lane.
And you're here for preliminary approval?
Yes.
Preliminary is requested. So why don't you go through your presentation, we'll get the minutes and we'll read them and then...
I don't know. Is this the applicants?
Okay, well, basically, there were about 5 items
we're asked to look at, the mass, bulk, and scale. And the big thing that went along with that was the roof ridge lines, which they were gables to change to hip, add stone to the second story, look at the entry and provide a landscape design, and all of those have been done.
Okay.
So these were originally gables to get away from the wedding cake look, which is a great idea. So I went to hip with these, continued the tails on the sides around to the front, to make a small change in the side. Originally, I had this running all the way up, and then it stepped back so that we don't come, which looks like 3 stories up here. It comes over, steps back in because there's a step to stay in the setback on this side. Brought in the stonework here, which, well, if you were 30 feet high in the street, it would look like it ties in with this.
Because it ties into the side elevations, right? Is that why that request was made?
No, I think just to kind of break it up, because the sides are so high that the only thing I could think about to tie that in would be to put sort of a plinth block type of thing here that would look like it anchors this. And yeah, so that's how it tied, because this does not go all the way down to the street. So on the original drawing, the gables came out like this, and now I've hipped all of these back.
Okay. Great.
Mr. Chairman, I think I have the minutes from, or the comments from the previous meeting, and the one thing that is a little strange is I don't see on the comments the request for stone to be incorporated. I think it says additional materials, study additional materials at the proposed first and second story for added detail. So I don't think we directed stone.
Okay, good. I was going to say, I was drinking not enough coffee then, or too much. Okay.
I assumed, or I couldn't think of what other material would.
Okay. Good. And did he cover all the other items from the minutes?
Pretty much so. Landscape plan, more pedestrian, street-friendly entrance, the bulk and mass scale, and reducing the roof lines. Consider a hip roof. So I think the applicant has looked at all of the comments. I think there maybe was just some misunderstanding about the materials of the second story.
Wonderful. Anything else for your presentation?
I've also provided some, I guess we'd call it, this is the proposed roof.
Put it right here in the center. Beautiful.
You have the color copy of this, which is a woodwork stain, which is a manzanita.
Okay.
The windows, or the outdoor lighting, is to match the existing. On this project, I did the living room, was before a design board, and got that okayed. Did the garage, was before design board got that okayed, and all of these elements were okayed on the existing house. So I'm just matching everything on the existing house, and the windows would match. Yes, it would also match, which is what is existing. The same with the stucco, which is what we call the Santa Barbara style of stucco.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
It's a good presentation. I will open up public comment. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this project? Seeing nobody, do we have any letters?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do have a letter of concern from Ms. Paula Westbury.
Great. Return it to the board for questions of the applicant. If there's no questions, we can go to comments.
Mr. Chair, kind of a question, comment.
All right.
Would the applicant be willing to remove the stone in these areas here in lieu of plaster?
Yeah, that easy. That was stucco.
Yeah.
This was stucco, and this was stucco. It was just mentioned to put something there, and I assumed that since stone was around here, that's what was meant.
Well, thank you for doing that.
The other thing that happens here is by the time you put two-piece mission tile
And
it takes up about 6 inches, and the flashing. You would have to see the house. This detail is an 1.5 inch thick type of Lincoln pavers that I've done 3 layers to accent this.
And
I'm
that's what this
going to
top
match
is?
that up here, and there'll actually be another one. So by the time that comes down 4.5 inches, and this comes up 6 inches, there's actually very little space left in there.
I concur as a comment to Glenn that making this plaster would be fine, and having that detail follow that detail is fine.
Great.
That was just...
I have a comment. If you were going to use stone, perhaps maybe as a, if anything, a wainscot at the garage level, maybe?
I think the garage building is already built.
Yeah, it exists.
Well, then I say, don't do the stone.
There's stone all over.
Yeah.
I mean, when I dug that, I had a yard full of stone. There's lots of stone in the yard, in the area.
Oh, thank you.
Good. I'll make another comment that it looks beautiful. I thought so before, and I thought so when I drove by it. I can tell your craftsmanship, it's going to be gorgeous.
Thank you.
Questions from other people? Comments? If not, we need a motion.
Is all the paving in the rear yard new or existing? Or?
It's all existing.
And the side yard as well?
Yeah, everything that's here, that's drawn here, is existing. So there's not the only thing on these steps will be redone on the east side. There are stone steps coming up here now, but they will be taken out and changed around. So everything else is existing. This is just old. There were these old stone walls back here, some 2-3 feet high, and they just break down the slope here. These are our steps back here. This was an original slab back here that I put flagstone on. Other than that, yeah, everything
So
is...
the plants as well? Or
yeah, the plants...
So you're not proposing any new landscaping?
Right. Except for the east side.
Do you have photos of them? Maybe I'm sure we have some photos.
Yeah, I have the original photos.
That's the last one. No, he doesn't need that. Great. Give him a couple minutes to look at that. I'll just say one thing. I think staff will want to have a color board that's like an 8.5 by 11 with all the items on one piece instead of the individual sheets.
Yeah.
But that's something you can do before final. Does someone want to craft a motion, or you, Mr. Zimmerman?
I see where you have, in this photo, you have the, is it board and bat or
Yes.
plywood and bat?
Yes.
Have you used that any other place on the new?
No, I was going to make the whole house the same stucco.
Mr. Chair, I'm ready
Glenn.
to make a motion.
Wonderful, I'll listen.
I'd like to make a motion for preliminary approval making NPO findings for neighborhood compatibility. I think the project is successful with the bulk mass scale. I think the quality of workmanship is good. The design is good. With the comment of removing that one area of stone that we pointed at before in these areas and on the return walls.
Can we be specific? It's the first floor deck over the garage.
And they return on the sides a little bit.
Right,
on the side
partially
of it,
return
right.
on the sides.
And to have the applicant return to consent, on consent for final.
Great. Is there a person who wants to make second that?
I'll second.
Second. Is there any landscape concerns, Aaron?
The only
I sort of have is the bark mulch area in the front that's used for parking.
Where do you see bark mulch for parking?
Lower left.
Yeah, right here.
Is that a parking area?
Yeah. Well,
no, it's not.
No, it's not. It's the front yard. What happened? I didn't want to put grass per se, and when I do construction, I'll use that area for construction offloading and loading, and then when it's done, it'll just go back to what it is. Basically, I didn't want to do, there's no grass anywhere else, so I didn't want to do grass there. You'd have to sort of visually be there, but I've got my little rose garden. I've got roses here, here, and back up in here, the lantana, and then as you look across here, you can just, it's just a nice look that you visually have to physically be there to see it. So I just haven't done anything with that area.
So I guess my only question, we could have a little plan for that area for consent or let it go as park mulch.
Who was the person who made first? And Bernie, you were the second person. Do you folks want him to provide additional landscaping in this front zone? Would that be beneficial to the project?
The footprint of the project hasn't changed, has it?
No.
Yeah, so I don't think it's going to be...
Okay. So we discussed it. Any other items to discuss? If not, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'll announce a 10-day appeal period for this project.
Okay.
Looks good, and you come back to final on consent. We are now on to item 5, which is 1409 La Cima Road. This preliminary approval is requested. And then we have a 20-minute recess from 5:30 to 5:50. So the people who are waiting realize 1724 Sunset Avenue will be heard around 6 o'clock, 5:50? Okay. We're on 1409 La Cima Road. This project is requesting preliminary approval. Don't eat all the dinner without us. Yeah. Start with your name, and then we'll have the minutes from the previous meeting.
My name is Justin Van Mullum. I'm with On Design Architects.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, these are the comments from the previous meeting. Review the... hopefully I got the right ones this time. 1409. Review the turret design with the owner and present a specific design. Number 2, show stepping stones into the trash area. Number 3, resolve the front walkway. Elevations are to match the site plan. Number 4, show the existing hardscape for the patio off the living room to the south. Number 5, show the existing fence along the southwest property line. Note whether the existing fence is to remain, to be repaired, or to be replaced. Number 6, address oak tree concerns and soils report with staff prior to returning. And number 7, staff to provide conditions of approval for construction protecting the existing private road to the south.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I might just address those items. I just wanted to first off let you know that the applicant did submit a revised arborist report, and the revised footprint and proposal is acceptable. There's no outstanding concerns with the oak tree other than the placement of the fence at the drip line critical root zone for construction. And then regarding the conditions of approval, I've had discussions with the design review supervisor and senior planner Jaime Limon, and we discussed that the items we just actually asked the applicant to, we don't create conditions of approval for private road easements. The city attorney has advised us. Otherwise, we actually ask the applicant to just make notes on the plans, and that the board actually reviews that they are noted on the plans, that they will respect the use of that private road in that sense.
The question for you is, those notes on the plans that the Single Family Design Board reviews, can that be done at final versus being required for preliminary?
Generally, we would like that to be part of the environmental review as well. So preliminary would be the primary, but they can just kind of make a note as to what that note will be on the plans, and then also in permanent print on the final plans.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, we have made the changes that the board has requested, but we haven't gone any farther. We want to make sure that we have preliminary. The thing that was holding us up mostly was because this project started with such a large footprint for an addition and demolishing the existing house, there was a request for a soils report and also for an arborist report. Now that we've pared back everything, and you're looking at our footprint now, basically this is our new footprint. There's the existing house, and the ghosted-in area is where the original plan was, and that has been abandoned. So going forward with the requests that the board had, we have gone with the turret design. The turret design was the simpler one on the back side. We met with the owners, and they felt that with this they would have a little bit more view of the mountains and the ocean, and they felt that that was very important. The other turret design kind of popped up, but had a little bit more of a housing. And the next question was for the site plan update, making sure that we had some way to get back from the trash enclosure to the street. We have some pavers that we've put across in that location. And then the front walkway, we have changed the front walkway so it matches the elevations. Before we had it kind of come down and turn, and now we have it coming down and turning as well as going straight. And then the fence, there were some questions about the fence and what was existing. We're showing the existing fence, and we're also showing it's a 6-foot dog ear, and we'll repair any damage that is existing to the 6-inch wide, 6-foot tall wood dog-eared fence. And then staff has already told you about the oak tree revised report. We're no longer in the critical root zone. The request from Bill Spiewak was that we provide fencing during construction to protect the critical root zone.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much. Move on to open up public comment. Is there anyone from the public? I have 2 speaker slips. First one will be Deborah Calvada, followed by Margie Mainquist. Can you turn that speaker on, that microphone?
Hello. Just my thoughts that, because I'm a neighbor.
Can you just say your name for the record?
Deborah Cavanda. And the scale still feels large to me. My home is 1,700 square foot, and the one next to it is also 1,600 square foot. From my house, I'm kind of worried about noise and lighting from where I am, but I don't know how to explain to you.
Just so I get the bearing straight, you're over in this region?
Yes, can I show you up there?
Sure. We'll figure it out.
So I'm over in this region over here.
Okay, perfect.
So this
Now we need you back on the microphone, but we all know that you're in this region.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Are you on this photo here? This is the house in question.
So your house would be over here? Let's spin it towards you first.
Yeah, I'm over here.
Okay. So back to the TV camera. The speaker is residing right where my hand is.
So lighting and noise, large scale, and height. But the only other thing is the soil. So on the soil does the soil report. Does that mean that any construction they feel that the hill should hold up pretty well?
Whoever gave the soils report basically determined that.
Okay. So that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker will be Margie Mainquist.
Hello, I'm Margie Mainquist, and I'm the neighbor directly.
This is you?
Let's see, that's me. That's me right there. Yeah. Okay. So I'm right there, directly adjacent. A couple of things. I still am concerned about the size at 2,600 square feet. It's the largest house in the neighborhood, except for one way at the end. Mine is 1,600 square feet, so that's still concerning. I'm happy with the quality of the design. That looks good. I am also concerned about the fencing and the, I guess it might be retaining walls and fencing along the side there. I have a hedge, I have a tree, I have landscaping there that I want to be sure that the construction protects. And I'm not sure if the fencing has been addressed at this point. It's curious. So
We'll ask that question.
and then finally, this private road issue is still out there. I just heard staff say they can't create conditions of approval. So that is a major concern. We do have a private road, which we pay for, and so we just want to be sure that parking and construction, turning trucks, et cetera, aren't using our private road.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? Seeing nobody, I'll ask staff, are there any letters of concern?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do have one letter of concern from Ms. Paula Westbury.
Great. Bring it back to the board for questions of the applicant. I've got...
There was a question on the last speaker, or a comment regarding a retaining wall on this side over
Is
here.
there a retaining wall proposed along this...
No, there's no need for a retaining wall.
On the previous design, there may have been,
Yes.
and it's been removed.
And there was several retaining walls on the previous design.
So currently, this existing 6-foot wooden fence is to be not changed, but repaired?
Repaired.
Okay. That's the answer. Any other questions? If there are no questions, we can move to comments. The applicant is requesting preliminary approval. Jim?
I think the design is very well done. 61% coverage, and I think the second floor, 700 square feet on the second floor, I think is broken up enough where it meets the mass, bulk, and scale.
Thank you very much. Other comments?
Mr. Chair, I would agree with Jim's comment. The second floor being above a garage and the main body of the house being elevated, it almost creates a split-level situation. And I think the FAR is, although it may be one of the larger ones in the neighborhood, is very acceptable for this size lot, I feel. And I'm comfortable with the design.
Thank you.
Me too.
It doesn't count. Your mic wasn't on.
Me too.
All right. All right, so now we need a motion. All right.
Propose preliminary, oh gosh, I just went.
Preliminary approval.
Approval for this project with final on consent.
Okay. NPO
And we need to
findings.
make NPO findings, which are compatibility with the neighborhood, quality of materials, and size, bulk, and scale are acceptable.
Thank you very much. And who was the seconder? I forgot already. Oh.
I'll second.
I'll give it to Jim. Jim's the seconder. Any other discussion? Any discussion? None. I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Opposed?
Mr. Chair?
Oops.
I just might add that you maybe resolve that private road easement and come up with some language that he can write on the plans as part of this preliminary approval.
Let's back up for a second. Can we take back that vote? No, dinner's getting cold.
If you recall, one of the things that we did was we kept this opening here because we've got a lot of flat area, and this is actually a concrete pad that will eventually be demolished, but we have the ability to have parking back here during construction. That was kind of our goal.
What I don't understand in the easement issue, and it's, I want to say out of my purview, is this the property line right here?
Yes, property line there and here as well.
Is there any need to... So this land belongs to somebody else?
That's correct.
So there's no reason for you to be on someone else's land to build this house?
That's correct.
So I don't understand why there's an issue of an easement.
Just again to address the neighborhood concern, and that when this project is undergoing a building permit, that it is noted on the plans that they will not, under construction at any time, utilize that private road. Just to basically note that on the plans.
Is that okay with the person who firsted it? Is it okay with the person who seconded it? So we have a modified motion. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And there's a 10-day appeal period. I'll announce that, and it is dinner time. We are going to take a 20-minute break. I'm going to reopen the Single Family Design Review Board for today, which I think is November 8th. We are now looking at 1724 Sunset Avenue. This is the first time we've heard this project, I believe? Yes. So I'm going to read through the project description. This is a conceptual review for a proposal to convert a portion of an existing attic area to a new 360 square foot second story master suite addition and a new 108 square foot second floor deck to an existing one-story, 944 square foot single-family residence with a detached 450 square foot garage on a 5,000 square foot lot. The proposal of 1,754 square foot residence is 72% of the maximum floor to area ratio guideline. It's a guideline because you're in R3 zoning. Yes. All right. Your name for the record, and let me turn this mic on. Can you push that little oval?
Right here?
Yep.
I'm Dan Weber, I'm the architect, and Alelia is the property owner as well.
All right.
All right, so the project, as you know, the house is a small cottage on the west side, located between Mission and Mitchell Terrena, just off San Andreas. Sunset is a two-block street of mostly cottages, and the general neighborhood has a mixture of, it's mostly cottages. This house was built in 1935, and there's some higher density multifamily housing mixed in there as well. And of course, down the street is a commercial area down San Andreas. I did include these images for you, just so you can understand the density patterns of the neighborhood and the context that we're in. We can take a closer look at these as well.
Some of us have driven by it, so we're familiar.
Okay. The house, why don't I show you the next page first. The house is typical cottage in the row of cottages. The distinctive feature is this huge tree right in the front yard, which is, I would guess, between 60 and 80 feet, something like that. What we want to do is actually, there's an existing attic upstairs that a previous owner had converted into a bedroom. And they sold the house, and so they had to tear out the stair. And now the current owners want to, as their family is growing, turn this back into a real master suite. So we're converting this already partially converted attic space into a real attic space. Into a real master bedroom, excuse me. So this is the house. Back of the house is an orange tree, double doors into the bedroom. If you're standing on the deck and you turn around, you look towards the backyard. There's quite high fences and hedges, so everything's really private back there. The side of the house and garage. You're looking at the garage doors or carriage doors that are open right here. Incidentally, we're not touching the the site or the garage. No new landscaping, no changes to the garage are proposed. No changes to the ground floor of the house are proposed. We're limited strictly to the attic space. I'll show you these. I'll show you a little bit more about the context really quickly. Right across the street. Or no, I'm sorry.
That is right across the street.
This is right across the street, okay. Cottages. This is the neighbor right to the north. Has a large hedge right in front of their house. You can see the house and the neighbor to the south on the same side of the street. All these this is viewed looking down the street. This is across the street and maybe 2 houses up, and it's second story, next door neighbor as well.
Okay.
It's all pretty typical, and then down the street the other way, this is, do I have an image of that? Oh yeah, this is, I think we've got multiple units in a big asphalt parking lot up there. The house is set back well beyond the 10-foot front yard setback that we have. There's a nice low, I think 18-inch stone wall in front of the house, and here's the tree. This canopy actually comes a lot bigger than I've shown in the diagram here. The driveway comes back to the garage. Downstairs, front walk, we're going to bring the stair up right through here, which is a hallway area right now. And in order to fit the stair in, we need to do a slight configuration of some of these existing interior walls. So there will be downstairs a couple interior walls removed, and bring a new stair up, which is open to the kitchen. Now upstairs, you come up this open stair, and you've got a large vaulted ceiling master bedroom and attached master bath. These strange jogs you see are dormer windows in the roof, which we'll look at in the elevations. But real simple. We want to do some small, just traditional wood style French doors that come out onto a new deck, which is a kind of a punch out of the roof as the roof slopes down away from the eave there. Everything we want to try to keep real low. The idea again is to keep the traditional style of the house as closely as possible. We're going to try to really, particularly the view from the street, try to maintain the existing cottage style and be really true to it. I did review this project with Jake Jacobus, and he was nice enough to kick around some design ideas with me, and we arrived at this after exploring a few other options of dormers. And we wanted to be really traditional and really calm and really stay as low as possible. So he was nice enough to help me out, and this was actually his suggestion to continue the existing roof slope up away from the house and raise the ridge high enough to get enough clearance under there, and add some dormer windows facing south. But this actually faces southwest. So that's that. No change to this portion of the house. No change to this. We'll keep this existing eave. And you can actually see, it's really faint, but right at about the eave of this dormer is where the previous ridge is. So we're extending the ridge up and adding these dormer windows.
Okay.
That was the front of the house. This is the back of the house. You can see this is facing the backyard now. You can see this deck is a punch out in the roof volume with a wood rail and another dormer window in the bathroom. This is all existing to remain downstairs. So this eave line is the same eave line that's there now as is this one. This is the side facing what we're calling east, which is actually southeast.
That's me.
Oh, okay.
Lounging.
All right. Other people. So you can see faintly the existing ridge line, which we're gonna pop up a little bit higher. This is the existing gable, which faces the street, and you can see the curb here. Sunset Avenue's right there. Since we are in an R3, we've got a 45-foot height limit, and I think we're less than half of 45 feet.
Okay.
Now the opposite side, facing northwest. It's kind of confusing how our grid is turned, but again, this is the existing gable facing the street. Sunsets just beyond. This is actually a sidewalk sunset of the streets just beyond. Existing windows downstairs and a new window in the space upstairs. You can see the dormers, which are set back from the elevation.
Great.
That's it.
Good presentation.
And Lily, is there anything that you wanted to add? I guess maybe address what's going on with the neighbors.
We have talked to all of our neighbors around us and have a few letters of support and are expecting a few more, so they're all very supportive of the project.
We're also really excited. We found out today we're having a boy in April, so we need some more space. And
Congratulations.
Thank you, and hope that this project can go forward.
Do you want to submit those letters for the record?
Yes, I will. Should I submit those to Michelle?
To Michelle's fine. Great. So with that, I will open up public comment. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this project? This project is 1724 Sunset. Okay, are there any letters? that have
Yes,
been
Mr.
submitted?
Chair, we do have a letter of concern from Ms. Paula Westbury. And also, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to add for the board's benefit here that you'll see the, what is that, the east elevation? The window, the existing window is considered to be illegal as built and will need to be, and that side of the elevation is non-conforming, so it's 5 feet. The required foot setback is 6 feet. So they either have to remove that window in that attic on that east elevation, or they have to push it back in some manner to make sure that it meets the 6 foot setback, required setback. You're not allowed to have a new opening on a non-conforming setback side.
If I can ask staff some questions. This is the elevation that you're talking about, and because the building is 5 feet from the property line, but the setback is 6 feet, they can't have the window at the 5 foot. But you're allowing the new construction for the gable end to happen in that zone.
No, that also needs to be pushed back and observe the 6 foot setback.
Or they need to
Or they
request
need
a
a
mod.
modification.
What we are planning on doing here was holding the interior space in the new wall back inside of the setback, and we had this idea today to put this window back in this wall and just have a deep recessed window. But the existing wall that's there, is in the setback.
I'll let you deal with that with staff, because if you are going to go for a mod, it wasn't noticed as a mod, so they would have to come.
They're not requesting a modification.
Okay, so we're just going to look at the project as it is today, and you'll have to resolve this with staff. Okay. Anything else, staff? Michelle? Great. I'll return it to the board for questions of the applicant. No questions? On to comments. I actually had one question. You're going to have to increase the height of the chimney?
Yeah.
Is the current chimney masonry?
I haven't investigated it, but I would assume that it is. It's original 1935. I'm sure it's a masonry chimney, and you can see the height of the existing chimney at that light dash line there.
Okay. That was my question. No questions? On to comments. Denise?
In looking at the deck, it does not comply with 15 feet from the property line rule.
Okay.
And so I'm wondering if that would be something that they could pull in a little bit, at least lose one of the window bays or double door bays.
The question I wanted to ask Michelle, staff, is that I did notice that this zoning is R3, and so when a commercial project comes forward, they don't have to honor the 15-foot setback, and a commercial apartment building can be at 6 feet. So what makes this different? Because it's a single-family use in an R3 zoning?
Yeah, at this point, it's the FAR and Neighborhood Preservation Ordinance apply only as guidelines in this case. It's not a requirement because it is an R3 zone.
And so a discussion to have among the board is first to understand what Denise just mentioned, is that we like to have 15 feet away for privacy issues. Yet in this zoning, because it's either R2 or R3, you could have decks that were multifamily a lot closer. So is it a guideline for us that we have some flexibility? We let people at 12, we let people at 11 because of things, or should we be hard and fast? And let's discuss it.
Well, Mr. Chair, I would say that given the nature of the neighborhood, and if it's all single family in there, that we need to apply the rule. That it's one of the, at least the neighbors on each side, if they're single family. I don't know.
So are you aware of what uses are next door to you?
Yeah, currently they're single-family uses. However, in the neighborhood, even within a one-block radius, there's a good deal of mixed multiple-family and higher density stuff.
The gentleman directly to the east, who would be closest to the deck, is one of our supporters. who is intending to give us the letter to submit to staff also.
Okay.
Yeah, if you take a look at the photos of the backyard showing this, it's very private.
Well, we're discussing it, and that's the best thing we can do, and then we'll see what happens. Any other comments?
What would it take to make it in compliance?
Well, 15 feet, and if this is 6, you double it again, that's 12, so 15 is probably going to be about to there. Or the other option is we ask people to put a screening of some sort along this side to give some privacy. So there's options.
Yeah, if you look at this in section, this is a quite a steep roof pitch, and the deck cuts back into the roof. So if you're standing in the middle of the deck, and you look directly to the property line, your view is blocked by the roof.
See, it cuts out that drawing. It's this.
Yeah, you can see I've added the line there. So you would have to step all the way to the edge of the deck to be able to see towards the neighbor. So if it is.
I think we all understand it. So, any other comments? Thank you for mentioning that. We'll get back to it.
Minor comments, Mr. Chair. In general, it was a nice presentation, and I really want to commend the applicant. To show that aerial photograph of the neighborhood, which should be a requirement on every project. It just gives us so much information. So that was great. The only two comments I have, and there's some discussion that needs to occur about the deck, is the railing being wood in the back. Although you can do it and it would be fine, you may want to look at another solution because of waterproofing there. It's going to be hard to attach that wood deck into something. So I would maybe look at just a little plaster wall or something to make it simple. And then the other comment, and it's just an interior comment, has nothing to do with our approval. Do you want to get a door that separates your master from downstairs?
We did discuss that, and we were okay with not having it.
Even a young one coming?
I want to hear that when it comes in at night.
Okay. And then the third comment has to do with this. I don't think where the window is shown currently, we could
We're here for comments only.
Yeah. But there's probably some solutions there that don't need a modification.
I'll tag on to what
I
he
could
said,
see
yeah.
it.
There's probably a solution that you can come up with that doesn't require a modification.
But it's not here yet.
It's not there yet, and we're just giving you comments. And then the other comment that I was going to make is maybe you don't need a fireplace on the first floor, or if you need a fireplace, maybe it's going to get replaced with a metal type instead of a masonry type, or you're going to have to change out the entire chimney flue system, because you can't, if you already have a masonry, it was built in 1935, and you want to alter it anyways, it's a can of worms. And that's just, I don't know, that's just, it scares me as an architect, so I wouldn't want to do that. But that's, anything else? Jim?
Oh, it's a master bedroom. It has, very low use. To have them go 15 feet, it almost cuts it in half. If they could devise a screen on the upper part of the balcony, I'd be for that.
Comments from other people regarding that?
I'm on that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the railing's shown at 3 feet, and it's going to have to come up 6 inches anyway.
42 inches. Brian?
Well, I was going to say, the screening, you've already got the slope of the roof pretty much blocking. So I don't know. I think you've already kind of addressed the screening issue.
It's a matter of whether he addresses it a little bit more, or if you think it's fine the way it is, and you think it's fine the way it is.
I have no problem with it.
Okay, cool.
I think it's fine.
Well, we're just going to give this project comments because they have to come back with some resolutions before we can give it preliminary. But any other comments before we wrap this one up? I'll just give you one. It's a fabulous design. I mean, you've got a lot here that you're working with. I mean, a lot of positive things here. So this three issues is one is the chimney, one is this end, and one is here. You address those things the next time you come. and you're moving forward. So does someone want to wrap that up in a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to let the applicants know that we appreciate their design. In general, the overall feeling about it is it is compatible with our guidelines, and it'll be a nice addition. We have a few concerns that we'd like to address that are the window, the modification or the lack of, and what was the thing?
Modification or lack of for the window at the gable end. Second one would be addressing the chimney, increasing the height in relationship to the ridge.
Okay.
And the third one would be to study ways of providing additional privacy screening
For the deck.
for the deck on the neighbor towards the east.
And so we'd like, go ahead. Well, we'd like it to return to the full board with those items, and then with the additional, what I would like to see is, well, here, I'll make the motion, then we'll
Okay,
comment.
that was,
Okay, that was
the motion. Who wants to be number 2? Second it? Aaron, saw that first. Mr. Miller, you had a comment?
So we're all in I'm not in agreement about the screening. I think there's adequate screening. So that's
Well, we asked him to study it, and so he can come back and challenge us if he wants, or he can volunteer a solution. But you already have one person.
May I also suggest that just losing one of those sets of doors on that side, you still have 3. It's still quite a nice opening, and that'd be a 12-foot setback, and that would satisfy me.
It's weird. I lean towards Brian. I don't have a problem with it. But then as soon as this becomes a 3-story apartment building, you're going to want something here. So I would recommend you putting something here for the future. But
Yes.
Any other comments? Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Indefinite continuance. Back to full board. Great presentation.
Oh, I forgot to ask you. I'm sorry. I forgot to ask if it would be possible to get back on in 2 weeks.
Let me ask staff.
Well, at this point, it's really up to you to design a solution that doesn't require modification.
Yep.
If you can do that within 2 weeks. I mean, the agenda is very open at this point. There's no time constraints, so I would leave it to you to have an indefinite.
We'll make it continue a 2-week continuance, and if you can't make it, call them ahead of time before they make the agenda.
Great.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Sure. We're moving on to item 7, which is 1519 Shoreline Drive. This is a new project, so I'm going to read the project description. This is a proposal to... Time out for a minute. I'm on. Did I jump a number? I'm on item 7, which is... I'm watching it. Okay, I'm going to continue. This is item 7. It's supposed to start at 6:20, so we're 5 minutes late. It is 1519 Shoreline Drive. It's a new project, so I'm going to read the project description. This is a proposal to demolish and rebuild 180 square feet of the existing dining room at the rear of the property and construct a new 180 square foot second-story deck addition to an existing 303 square foot deck. A new 27 linear foot site wall and a gate adjacent to the driveway, and replacement of all the existing windows and doors to an existing 2-story, 3,349 square foot single-family residence on an 18,000 square foot lot in the appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone. The proposed alterations are located within the 50-foot coastal bluff and within the 75-year Sea Cliff retreat line. The project requires Planning Commission review for coastal development permit. The existing 3,349 square foot residence is 76% of the maximum floor to area ratio guideline. If we have your name for the record in your presentation.
Sure. I'm Amy Von Potts. I'm the designer on this project.
And I'm David Delory, and I represent Hammerhead Construction, the contractors for the project. And can I make
Get a little closer to the microphone.
Perfect. Can I make one comment, please? There's a typo in our description. We are not within the 75-year retreat line, and it's shown on the site plan.
So this is the 75-year, and this is the 50-year.
So you're within the 50 year.
75. The 75 runs right along the property, and the 50-year is back, 50-foot setback line.
So you are located within the 50-year Sea Cliff retreat line?
Setback line.
50-year setback line, okay.
And we're not within 75.
And you're not. Okay. Staff so knows it.
This also says existing.
I think the second floor is going to be that area.
Yeah, the second floor is in that area, and then it is
Lined up there.
Well, staff will work on that. You want to go through the quick photographs?
Okay, so the biggest thing about our site is that it's, to get to the site, you have to come all the way down the driveway from Shoreline Drive. Then, so you can see that in this photo, this is the garage door of our property.
Okay.
Then this is a street view, and again, you can't see it.
Correct.
And then here is the, walking down the driveway, here is the garage door. This is the north elevation of the house. West elevation, which is right along, this is the existing guest house. And this is the east elevation, which is over here. And the south elevation is directly from the ocean view.
You have a photograph of what's being rebuilt, the area of work?
So this is the south elevation. This is the new. We'd like to rebuild this little round area right here. Right here, exactly. And then we're proposing to continue this deck out over this when we rebuild it, and bring this up to the height of the existing deck.
Okay. I think we understand that.
So right now, this is the existing plan. The family room is this round area, kitchen. Again, we'd like to replace all the doors and windows. And you saw from the site plan, the 50-foot setback comes right through this area. The existing guest house is here, 2 bedrooms here, entry. And then upstairs, we have a master bedroom. We have a den, and again, the existing deck only comes this far.
Okay.
And here's the line of the new circular room, or this is the circular room below.
Existing one below.
Exactly. And coming up to our proposed, we would like to put some columns in here and replace these windows. There's some, we'd like to make a circular entry to mimic the new dining room. We'd like to do a couple interior changes. And right now, we have 2 windows on either side of the fireplace, which are not symmetrical. And we, after talking to the owners, we would like to fill these 2 in and open up the area so they get more of an ocean view, and they can use this to better suit their living needs. And then going upstairs, with the kitchen, they'd like to remodel the kitchen, and they would like to open this up here to have an eating area, so they can get the ocean view here. And then coming upstairs, they'd just like to add reconfigure a gym and reconfigure a master bath and master closet. And our proposed look, we'd like to go more of a Spanish hacienda look. We were planning on using the Jeld-Wen windows, so we have a nice high quality. We also have existing wrought iron on the existing front door, and we'd like to keep that, just raise the door up and give it more of an arched look. want to add anything?
We're not adding any square footage. That's a big item. We're staying within the footprint of the existing structure, and we're not impeding on anybody's view whatsoever.
And you can see that from the photos that we showed you.
Okay. And new garage doors.
New garage doors. But they'd still be the full, they're not sliders or anything, we just wanted more hacienda look for those.
Yeah, we're just trying to make a nice looking house out of something that is now a simple looking house, trying to dress it up.
Thank you very much. So with that, I'll see if there's any public comment. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this project? Seeing nobody, do we have any letters?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do have one letter of concern from Ms. Paula Westbury.
Thank you very much. Return it back to the board for questions of the applicant. And this is going to be for comments only since it has to go to Planning Commission.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Where is the 27-foot wall?
The retaining wall, the site wall?
Actually, it's not a retaining wall. Right now, if you can see from the dash line, this is where the existing driveway is. And what we'd like to do is separate the driveway from the common area over on the side of the house. So we'd like to put the wall right here.
How tall is it?
With 8 feet, I believe. And that's... So we're talking right here, an 8 foot, so they can go through this to the parking area. So it would be with a wooden door.
8'6".
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Chair, I have some questions. I want to get to the proposed plans, where they are. So the questions I have, according to the elevations, this is basically lined up with this plane, and there's a roof over this entire thing. I think there's a post somewhere here to support the roof.
Correct.
And it follows through down probably here. Are these?
Those are the posts.
Those are posts.
Right.
Okay. So the question is, when you translate that to the site plan, right
here. Correct.
So the intent is to not have the post hit in front of that 75-year line.
And it's not. I believe it is. He's asking if the post is within the 75.
No, it isn't within the 75. It is within the 50-foot.
50-foot
setback, correct.
And then maybe a question to staff: can a deck cantilever over that 50 or the 75-year line?
That's what the case planner will discuss with the Planning Commission. At this point, we're just looking for comments for the architectural style.
And the existing deck does not go over. The new deck is only over this circular. The existing deck is already here. Okay.
Jim.
What significance is the 50-foot setback versus, I know what the 75-foot setback is, but what's the 50?
The 50 is the actual distance from the edge of the bluff, the 50-foot.
Oh,
the
okay.
75-foot is the erosion based on a period of time. And our geological report from Adam Simmons projected that we're not in the 75 year. Correct.
Why even show the 50 feet?
It was required.
Oh.
Denise?
I may be looking at this wrong, but it seems to me these are reversed, the 75-foot setbacks on this plan.
It's a year in.
Because it wouldn't make sense that the 50-foot is further in from the 75, from the top of bluff, right?
Yeah.
I measured out, and the one that you've got labeled as 75 is actually 50 feet from top of bluff. So I think they're reversed.
Well, wait a minute.
Am I wrong about
If you're,
that?
it should say 75-foot year.
It should be 75 year, not feet.
Yeah,
Because it's written wrong. You have 75-foot structural.
Because when I scaled it up, it's that 75,
Correct.
structural setback line measures to 50 feet from the top of bluff, so that's why I thought perhaps they were
It's
reversed.
75 year. Yeah,
Okay,
correct.
all right. I'm sorry. Confuses us too.
What about the architecture?
No. Oh.
Let's go into comments, folks, unless there's another question. I can always go first, but that's cheating.
I'll go first.
Aaron.
I think it's going to be an improvement to a otherwise existing dollhouse. I question some of the window types that are being used since all the windows are being changed out, correct? If they fit with the style.
Okay. That's one.
Mr. Chair, I'll kind of follow up on my curiosity on this corner here. I know there's some lines established on the ground somewhere, but the way in plan this post and these rails work, the post is actually inset from the railing. And then this deck, I guess, is cantilevering past the post down below. And it just seems a little awkward or strange to do that. I think Aaron's comments about the window types is very good, specifically when you look at a round room, which is difficult anyway in a Spanish style, probably, to do. But overall, I mean, it seems an appropriate style to me. It seems like it's an upgrade. So no big concerns, just smaller things.
Okay.
And one little question. On the north elevation, this new stone niche, is it kind of smashed into the wall? Is there a reason? Is it because it's hidden behind a wall? Is that correct? Is that why
So it's going to be right here because it's way back.
Oh, because I see what happened. I got it.
It does look smushed because it's way back in this corner.
Got it. Thank you.
I'll make one comment about the windows. I sense that they're different, but I'm okay with it because our courthouse has different windows on every elevation. It's just part of the playfulness of it. Design-wise, I'm fixed on this thing, and then how it turns the corner over here, I don't quite sense it, but that can get resolved later, so I'm not going to lose sleep over it, because these are just sketches to show the concept, and I think the concept is fine. As you develop it further, things will get resolved. So I find it's a great improvement. So, any other comments? And if not, this is going to go to Planning Commission for a coastal permit. Coastal development permit. And I guess if the board thinks that this is a great project and it's an improvement, I'd like to make that the first comment right off the bat. So the Planning Commission says that we think the architecture is going in the right direction, we think it's an improvement, and we look forward to seeing the next generation of drawings of further design or something of that nature.
I'm not quite there.
Okay.
Mainly the two things. I do think could be an improvement, but I'd like to get more information about the wall and how it's going to be perceived from the street, if it will or if it won't.
Do you have an aerial photograph of this area at all?
I don't.
Sorry, we don't.
And also my second one, I'll just say both of them and then you can talk about them, is the deck size, the total deck size, and if it is going to be a compatible size for the neighborhood.
Your response?
First of all, this wall won't be seen from the street because you have the adjacent property is right here. You see, and the wall is right here, so you won't see that from the street. As far as the deck goes, they really felt, because when you come out this door, from here to the top of the bluff is very, it's what, 20 feet, 30 feet maybe?
Yeah, well,
And so they wanted to have more deck space on the upper for entertaining area. And because they're going to be rebuilding this, they wanted just to continue the existing deck. And you can see from the photos, they're not, nobody's view would be
Impacted.
at all.
Okay.
I would say it's a great house, and considering you really don't see it from the street, it's not really going to be an issue regarding neighborhood compatibility, other than being within the parameters of the zoning requirements, which you are. So I'm perfectly fine with it. I think it's fine.
Do you think you can craft that into a motion?
oh yeah,
It's comments only to Planning Commission.
And again, there's the site, so the wall would be
It's behind this house.
behind this house.
yeah, I see.
And so before you go to Planning Commission, get one of those aerial photographs in an angle like the previous person did.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yes, you still need to make a motion.
Make a motion that the architecture definitely is an improvement to the existing structure, and that the NPO findings.
No,
we don't say that because it's. And we do think it's an improvement to the existing structure. Do we have any? I don't know what else to say. I think.
Say thank you.
Ellen, thank you. It's very positive improvement. Thank you.
Is there anyone who wants to second that?
I'll second.
Okay. Anybody want to add anything else? I was wondering if we could make a comment about saying that we don't see any adverse impact to the increase of the deck on the second floor. If that was something that majority of the board is okay with, sensing that it's greater than 15 feet, so that's not an issue, and the form is already there. If anything, it's just increasing in height by about 3 feet, which is the railing.
And actually, it's not even that, because, let me get closer.
That was the railing. He's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that okay with some of the... Brian, is that okay? Kathy, do you kind of sort of understood what I said? Cool. Any other comments from board members on this motion? Are we ready to take a vote? Bernie, are you okay? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. You're on to Planning Commission.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We're on the last item of the night, 6:50. Now we'll start it anyway, 5 minutes early. This is 856 Willow Glen Road. This is a new project, so I'm going to read through the project description. This is a proposal to construct a new 301 square foot second story addition to an existing one-story 2,572 square foot single-family residence, including an attached 373 square foot two-car garage. The proposed total of 2,873 square feet on the 11,000 square foot lot is 74% of the maximum floor area ratio. Have your name for the record in your presentation?
Yes, Richard Six from LMA Architects. Yeah, let me have that one though.
Do you have any site photos?
Yeah, it's on the back page.
Perfect.
So this is a single family located above San Roque on Foothill Drive as you're approaching La Cumbre. So it's a corner lot, a pretty typical ranch-style neighborhood. And it has existing, we're doing nothing on the site. All of our addition is within the roofscape of the project. The neighborhood, the first series of photos is the subject property. And we're coming up Willow Glen here as it comes onto Foothill, where there's a slight rise here, that there's a slope to the property. And here we are with a driveway coming up Willow Glen and coming around Willow Glen here. And as you approach, this is looking at 90 degrees to the house, so the end of the house is here. And then as we get onto Foothill itself, we have a significant hedge along here and wall that protects them from the sound and traffic of Foothill. The rest of the neighborhood have taken shots down through these. They're fairly eclectic, but ranch and various different designs, mostly one story. There is a two-story house across the street, but it's fairly standard neighborhood. So what we're doing very simply is a modest two-story addition. It's a one-story house. It's two gables with a simple ridge down the center and a gable for the garage off to the front, and then a gable that was added later in the back. So we will be coming up through the center of the house. There's an extra large bedroom here that we'll be consuming partially for the new stairs, and we will be doing a 300 plus or minus square foot workshop upstairs with a bath and small storage. So stair, workshop, and bath and storage. The roof is a 5 and 12 pitch and with pretty wide girth. So by centering the addition, we're able to bury most of the mass inside the roof, as you'll see in the elevations. We have attic doors and so forth that continue into the attic. And so here is the front of the house, the garage that protrudes out this way. We're putting it again into the center of this attic and of the roof form. We'll be following the siding and colors and the window shapes as exactly as existing. So it's pretty simple and straightforward.
Great, thank you very much.
That's it.
See what the last page is, and then the photos.
Yeah, the photos. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak? Seeing nobody. Do we have any letters?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do have a letter from Ms. Paula Westbury.
Thank you very much, Paula. And we'll move it back to the board for questions of the applicant.
Oh, here. Excuse me. I did. We have a little graphic here, three-dimensional of it, and a little more color added to the elevations. So
cool.
A little better sense of what's happening.
So if there's no questions,
Maybe it's a question.
action can be taken if sufficient information is provided. Glenn.
I think the design looks good, and I don't have a problem with the addition. Just a curiosity, making sure that the building department's not going to consider that a bedroom.
But what's the problem if it is a bedroom?
Egress windows.
That,
Egress windows.
that's just these have to open up to whatever the size is.
And they have to be low enough.
This is the one, but he moves this wall forward.
Yeah, there's solutions.
Glenn, that's a good point. I'll check.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to consider it.
Yeah. Yeah, well taken.
Yeah, you want it to be a bedroom. I mean, you had a Murphy bed in there. Why not? For resale, it's a 4-bedroom house now versus a 3. Any other comments? All right, we need someone to make a motion. And we can take action on this item and decide if it should come back to full board or back to consent.
Before we do that, have you talked to any of the neighbors at all about it?
Well, it was fully
noticed
and so forth.
So everybody was comfortable?
Yeah, if you look at the closest neighbor is clear on this. There's only really one adjacent neighbor, and they're so far away that I would have been very surprised if we had had some reaction.
All right, well, I'd like to make a motion then, Mr. Chair,
All
for preliminary approval and to return to the consent calendar with final drawings, and with the following comments would be: one, to verify that the windows are following the
Egress requirements.
Okay, the egress
if applicable.
if applicable, and to bring any window design colors
How
that
about
you're
just a
going to be
color
using.
board?
Color board. Is the garage going to be changed or no? That's about it.
Just a color board of the proposed colors for the addition. Is there someone who wants to second that motion?
I'll second.
Second by Denise. Any other additional comments?
I just have one. I think it's a really good
Design and very non-aggressive in terms of your addition.
Oh, Bernie, if every second-story addition could look like this, we would never have to talk to the neighbors. This board wouldn't exist.
Chair, did we make NPO findings?
For preliminary approval, that is true.
Okay, yes. I would like to add that the project does meet our guidelines in terms of neighborhood compatibility. The size, bulk, and scale are ideal for the neighborhood. They fit right in. And
Quality building
the
materials?
materials are quality, and the craftsmanship will be quality.
And there's no landscaping impacts.
No landscaping impacts on the neighborhood.
All right, so we have NPO findings. We have a first and second. Anything else? I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I'll announce a 10-day appeal period.
Thank you very much, folks.
All right.
Have a good night.
Have a good night, too. And Santa Barbara, have a good night as well. It's time to sign off.